I'm gonna be nice tonight.
Good evening. It is Monday, July 27th, and it is 7 a.m. 7:01. It is 7:01, and I call to order this meeting of the Committee of the Whole. Will the clerk please read the roll? Call the roll.
Councilmember Wu.
Here.
Councilmember Evans.
Here.
Councilmember Hersey. Here. Councilmember Jones.
Here.
Councilmember Cockrell.
Here.
Councilmember Wilkin.
Here.
Councilmember Quisenberry.
Here.
Mayor Williams.
Here.
Thank you.
All right, we have the approval of the minutes for the City Council meeting from June 1st, 2026. Is there a motion to approve?
Second.
All right, the motion to approve the minutes by Mary Alice and second by Verdale. I have to say your last name too. Okay, all right. Are there any corrections or changes? All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, those minutes are approved. Are there any additions or changes to the agenda? With no further additions, we'll move on to public input. If anyone is interested in speaking, you may come up to the microphone, and you will have 5 minutes to speak.
Thank you.
You may
My-
state your name for the record.
Thank you. My name is Esther Pat. I live in Urbana, and I'm the director of the Champaign-Urbana Tenant Union. I'm here to talk about the housing study. For decades, both in Urbana and nationwide, when tenants are asked, what are the main housing problems you have, top of the list is always landlords not performing, need the repairs. And a close second is finding affordable housing is difficult. In response to these two concerns, I urge you to include in your housing study data about Urbana's code enforcement efforts and an inventory of current rents in Urbana. Last week, I emailed to all of you an example of the reports that used to be included quarterly in city council packets about failure to comply tickets. Since 2013, when a tenant requests a city inspection because of repair problems and the city issues a notice of violation to the landlord, if the landlord fails to correct the violations by the deadline, the landlord is fined and served a failure to comply ticket. The housing study should include that data for the last 10 years, along with the report of how many notices of violation are issued each year and how many owners do correct the violations by the deadline and how many don't and how long it takes. I also think it'd be a good idea just for the council's awareness if the study included the number of rental units declared unfit for habitation each year, indicating how many were in an entire building that was closed down, in which case you probably noticed it, but how many individual apartments in different places get closed down, because that's something about which you may not be aware. To understand affordable housing, it is absolutely vital that you know the costs of the housing we now have in Urbana and get that information in a useful format. For example, the Census Bureau will tell you that the median rent in Champaign County is $1,081. All that tells you is that half of all rental properties of whatever size are affordable to households with incomes above $50,000 a year. But it doesn't tell you how many rental units are affordable to households with incomes of $40,000 a year or $30,000, or how many of the units affordable to households with income of $50,000 have 3 or more bedrooms. This is the specific information that you need to evaluate housing proposals that come to you, because if there's federal or state money, they often are indexed based on incomes, and to create an affordable housing strategy that will actually address the needs of the people in this community. Good news is that Urbana's rental registration program already has a database of every street address in the city that has one or more rental units, and it also has the number of units at each property because you bill landlords annually a rental registration fee that's based on a charge per building and a charge per unit. Please send to everyone on that list a survey asking the amounts of rents they currently charge for each type of rental unit. And this is the part that's important. How much do they charge for their one bedrooms? How much for their two bedrooms? How much for their threes? Because that tells you what people are actually running into. And also, please, 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 and this is really the reason I came in person, I'm begging you, please, on your survey, break it down by the rent amounts by $100 increments. Because someone telling you that they have 250 two-bedroom apartments that rent for $950 to $1,550 is like that 1081 figure. It doesn't tell you what you need to know. You want to know how much is there for the different income levels of people in the city. I strongly believe that you and your staff need this information about code enforcement and about actual rental amounts to understand rental housing. And with this information, though you might not understand as much as I have learned intuitively in 50 years of doing this work, I really believe these two sets of data, most of which you already have, well, some of which you already have, will give you the perspective about rental housing that tenants have. And almost two-thirds of the people in Urbana are tenants, and other than surveying them all directly yourself, which I wish you would do, this is one way to at least find out what they are experiencing and seeing in their lives as tenants. Thank you very much. No, I'm telling him. So you can see.
Jim Barrett, 101 West Windsor in Urbana. The statement's from the Champaign branch of the American Civil Liberties Union. A copy has been emailed. Your Mayor Williams and members of the City Council, we, the American Civil Liberties Union of Champaign County, write to commend the council for its work on the ordinance requiring City Council approval for police surveillance technology. We strongly support passage of the ordinance. Our ACLU chapter is a community organization representing approximately 1,200 households in Champaign County, a great many of whom live in Urbana. We work with ACLU Illinois to protect civil rights and civil liberties in Champaign County. The ACLU maintains that legally enforceable safeguards, including robust transparency, oversight, and accountability measures must be in place to protect civil rights and civil liberties before any surveillance technology is deployed. The decision regarding if and how police technology should be funded, acquired, or used, and whether data from such technology should be shared. This should not be made until meaningful public input has been solicited and given significant weight. The ordinance under discussion ensures that Urbana residents will have that opportunity. If a police technology is approved, data reporting measures must be adopted that empower the council and public to verify that mandated civil rights and civil liberties safeguards have been strictly adhered to. This is critically important because while police technology may threaten the privacy of all of us, surveillance efforts have been used throughout history to intimidate and oppress certain communities and groups more than others, including those that are defined by a common race, ethnicity, religion, national origin, income level, sexual orientation, or political perspective. Therefore, ACLU Champaign County strongly urges the Urbana City Council to pass this resolution.
Good evening. My name is Brian Dolliner. I live at 303 West Locust in Urbana. It's nice to see some friendly new faces on council. And I want to thank Grace Wilkin for composing and pushing through this police surveillance ordinance, and thanks to the leadership of Mayor Williams for helping to get this across the finish line. I also wanted to address a growing concern, since this ordinance was originally floated, a growing concern over flock automated license plate readers. There's a growing movement in town as well as nationally to oppose these kind of things. Urbana continues to hold out against flock cameras, and we hope that continues to be the case. Flock cameras have now been rejected by more than 80 jurisdictions, cities across the United States, most recently in Bloomington, Indiana, not too far away. Mostly their concerns were with data sharing, with the way in which data from the license plate readers ended up, and this was in a couple news stories, ended up in the hands of ICE in one case, and in the other to track down a woman seeking an abortion. Thankfully, Urbana is already not crossed that line, but Flock has also been receiving a lot of bad news. The CEO, whose name is Garrett Langley, referred to activists as terrorists and had to rescind his comments. There was a report in Mother Jones about dozens of police using Flock to stalk girlfriends, ex-girlfriends, and their boyfriends. This is not too hard to imagine. While not Flock related, Urbana University of Illinois police officer named Jerry Sandage just took a deal for 25 years. He was stalking using police records to stalk girlfriends. He's got a total of 4 cases against him, and he pled out to the first one, taking 25 years. Closer to home in Urbana, folks who have been here long enough might recall Urbana officer Kurt Yort, who, while an officer, stalked and was accused of raping a woman in Urbana. And that was the impetus behind the Police Review Board in Urbana. So it's important, again, just to remind folks that it's important that we rein in this kind of increasingly invasive police surveillance technology. And hopefully the ordinance does not give police a green light to move forward with this kind of technology, but continues to engage the public in a larger discussion about what we do and don't want in Urbana. So thanks so much, Grace. We appreciate all your work over the years. Good night.
My name is Mitch. I'm a graduate student at University of Illinois. I live in Urbana, and I also run a small business from my house in Urbana. This is my first time speaking at a city council meeting, and I'm here to commend the city council on 2 issues, actually, both related to Flock automated license plate reader cameras. Very quickly, for those unaware, Flock cameras are tracking license plates all around town. It essentially allows law enforcement to track every single citizen as if they had a GPS tracker on their car. You will hear others talk about how this data has been shared with federal immigration services, but to me, the more pressing issue is that it's a very clear violation of our Fourth Amendment right to privacy. It enables law enforcement to keep a record of every citizen's movements, whether it be 30 days or further, and no warrants are issued for this data. Regardless of your stance on immigration enforcement, I think this is like a bipartisan issue that affects all of us, citizens or not. We're currently being tracked without a warrant by Flock cameras, even tonight. First, I'd like to commend all the council members who have repeatedly rejected measures to bring Flock into Urbana over the past 5 years. I understand there's probably been significant pressure to adopt Flock cameras here, and I appreciate your resistance to it. As an Urbana resident, I'm proud to live in a Flock-free city, and it feels like a breath of fresh air to drive around Urbana knowing that my movements are not being logged by a private surveillance company. I appreciate the council's decision to defend our Fourth Amendment rights in the face of political and economic pressure. And if you continue to vote in favor of protecting Urbana from mass surveillance, you will have my support and many others. Thank you for your voting record on this matter. The second issue I would like to talk about is the ordinance number 2024-12042, which is the ordinance establishing requirements for policing surveillance technology and databases. I'm here to voice my strong support for this measure as an Urbana resident. Although Flock cameras are a big problem, they're only the beginning of a much larger movement. Even if flock safety goes bankrupt and every flock camera across the country is torn down, Axon, Motorola, and many others will be there to take their place, and they're actively working to develop increasingly discreet and intrusive means of surveilling the American population. These include automated drone surveillance and Wi-Fi and Bluetooth tracking, which are not as obvious as cameras on every corner. These allow police and private entities alike to track citizens without their knowledge or warrant. The proposed ordinance will help protect Urbana residents from this looming mass surveillance threat and ensure our right to privacy is upheld for future generations. It will also ensure that any future surveillance architecture will require democratic approval via the City Council. This is a bigger deal than you might think. Currently, the Champaign County Sheriff has installed dozens of flock cameras across the county despite opposition from the county board. The sheriff is able to act unilaterally to install surveillance cameras right outside our neighborhoods despite public opposition, despite Urbana City Council rejecting it. The decision to adopt mass surveillance technology is one that should be made by the community, not by a single person. The proposed surveillance technology requirement ordinance would ensure that Urbana residents feel secure in their community without the concern of private companies, federal agencies, or hackers watching their every move. I urge the council to vote in favor of this ordinance and set an example for the nation. We have a chance to reject mass surveillance in our town and protect our community from prying eyes. I truly believe this measure will change the way our country handles the issue of surveillance. By requiring democratic consent before surveillance architecture is installed, we can ensure that our community is not taken advantage of by the federal government, surveillance companies, or malicious actors. I'd like to thank everyone, including Grace Wilkin, who played a role in this. And I would like to thank you in advance for voting in favor of it. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Derek Ping. I'd like to echo my concerns, the concerns that others in the community have about surveillance, and I'm in support of this new ordinance that's been introduced with regard to that. But actually, my comment tonight is going to be a short comment in favor of the new ordinance about banning the sale of new fur products in Urbana. So my wife and friends and I enjoy spending a lot of time in the natural parks of Urbana, including Busey Woods, Meadowbrook, and Weaver Park. We love observing the local wildlife and experience great joy from seeing the deer, squirrels, raccoons, rabbits, and other furry creatures. One day, I was very fortunate to see a wild mink next to the creek that flows by Busey Woods. I believe that wild animals should enjoy lives out in nature as those that I observe in Urbana, and that they should not be crammed into uncomfortable cages in sheds or barns. For this reason, I am speaking in favor of the ordinance to ban the sale of new fur products in Urbana. The reality is that the vast majority of fur products made from animals such as minks, foxes, and raccoon dogs come from fur farms where animals live trapped in often filthy and uncomfortable cages. These animals did not evolve to live like that, and it causes them great distress. They are killed after living a life of confinement to produce objects of vanity. In a world with many alternative and environmentally friendly materials, the use of fur products is not at all necessary. Because fur products are not necessary, they should not be sold in a city where the residents care about animals. Let us help to create a culture where unnecessary animal suffering is avoided. Please vote in favor of the ordinance to ban the sale of new fur products in Urbana. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Gabriel Dunn. I'm a resident of Ward 2. So I'm actually going to be speaking on two items. So the one that I'm supporting, which is an ordinance establishing, approving policy and reporting requirements for policing, surveillance, technology, and databases, Exhale. I fully support, and I just wanted to report that this is now not a partisan issue, but officially, gubernatorial candidate Darren Bailey has come out as against flock technologies, and surprisingly, Governor J.B. Pritzker is in support of it. So I noticed. I hope it doesn't sway people who were opposing flock technology to just be partisan, say, well, now I'm in support of it because the D's are in support. But I just want to say that this is not a partisan issue. There are conservatives out there that are concerned about a mass surveillance state. And so when you're out there talking, just mention that this is a bipartisan issue, that, you know, even quote unquote MAGA is opposed to this type of technology. So here's the ordinance that I'm speaking against, and this is the one on the fur thing. We were just talking about government, increasing government power using a surveillance state, and the idea of outlawing trading in fur. So here's the thing, I did not know that Urbana was a huge fur trading town. And second of all, like, I understand that there are people that have, you know, deeply held convictions about wearing and eating animal products. I will defend to the death for your right to have those views and fight for, you know, your right to express those views and your right to live according to your conscience. But for those of us who, you know, don't have those same convictions, I don't think it's appropriate for any government to make that a criminal offense, whether it's municipal, statewide, or federal. It's kind of like, it's more like the libertarian thing of like, live and let live, you know? I'm someone who, I don't eat pork and I don't eat shellfish, but, you know, I'm not trying to get the city of Champaign and the county to shut down Red Lobster. So I honestly think, like, you know, out of all the priorities that the city is needing, particularly with housing, I am sorry, but trying to outlaw selling fur in Urbana is not one of them. So good job, Grace, on the surveillance ordinance. And I, you know, we don't see eye to eye on a lot of things, but I'm, you know, just want to, I understand that you're going to be stepping down soon, and I just want to say thank you for your service to residents of Ward 6 in the city of Urbana from the opposite side of the aisle, and thank you for listening. So.
Hello, I'm Anne Marie Shapiro. I live in a house 508 South Cottage Grove, and I own a house 810 Hawthorne Drive that my daughter and my grandson live in. And I also want to echo and kind of build off of a couple recent statements, probably destroying my planned 5 minutes. But I wanted to make a statement about the technology in general and the ordinance, which I fully support, and I also just want to say thank you. I also echo this gratitude for being able to live in this city and drive around and know that I'm not being trailed constantly by technology that's probably going to be shared nationwide. And I'm actually working on kind of stopping shopping in Champaign for that reason, and I'm going to be doing business and staying in Urbana as much as I can because of this. It's that important to me. What I wanted to say, though, is this is a huge big deal. It is so far beyond just police surveillance, and I personally don't even take it as a focus on police versus citizens. There are people seriously at the international and national level talking about this technology becoming so powerful and putting down human beings, like we're so inefficient and we keep making mistakes and police keep killing people and all this stuff about how people are so fallible and we're so stupid and AI is so much smarter than us. There are people seriously hoping that with enough time and maybe another generation of new people raised up in this, that stuff is going to replace government. It's going to replace human policing. I mean, we're talking about a dystopian future that people are seriously discussing. And so I come to this from a perspective not just at a local immediate level where there are very legitimate concerns, but that this is important and this is where it happens at the local level, where we take control and we say, we validate governmental processes, we validate human judgment, we validate the systems that have served humanity for so long, and we push back on technocratic oversight of humanity by technology. Maybe not next year, but there are people seriously discussing this by 2030, 2050, and beyond. So I wanted to share, I don't know how much time I have left, that on June 29th, 2026, the Supreme Court actually made a ruling that is very, very germane to all of surveillance. And it had to do with the two factors are, it is technologically collected data, it's mass collected location data, and then it was accessed through a warrant retroactively. So the data is stored, it was gathered passively on everybody, it's location data. This happened to come from cell phone location data to solve a crime. And so the Supreme Court has come down with rulings that are germane for all sorts, flock cameras, any kind of passive surveillance. So they have reiterated that those searches, those uses of that data fall under the Fourth Amendment, and they are Fourth Amendment searches, so they are protected by the Constitution. That the Fourth Amendment's basic purpose is to safeguard the privacy and security of individuals against arbitrary invasions by government officials, and to place obstacles in the way of a too permeating police surveillance. And they have said that individuals have a reasonable expectation of privacy in the whole of their physical movements. So one of the things that happened on June 29th is, well, the police only wanted an hour of data out of, limitless data about phone location. And they said even short-term monitoring can produce a wealth of detail about a person's familial, political, professional, religious, and sexual associations. And where the Fourth Amendment applies, it applies regardless of the quantity or quality of information obtained. They also rejected the government's argument that it's a third-party doctrine. If you allow your cell phone to collect your location data, then that is outside of the Fourth Amendment of the Constitution, and they rejected that not once but twice. And they said a third-party data source is a government search that falls under the Constitution as soon as government accesses it. So the Institute of Justice, there are some key parts here. One is that it's just passively collecting data on everybody without any suspicion of any of those people, and then it's stored so then it can retroactively be searched for when suspicion happens. Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name is Bhavna, and I'm a CS PhD student here at the University of Illinois. I've met with a few of you council members individually about the surveillance ordinance, and I'm here again tonight to speak in support. So my dissertation in computer science focuses on how to bring about more democratic control over the technologies that impact our lives. In part of this dissertation, I've analyzed over 100 AI policies passed by local governments in the United States, with almost a fifth of them being just surveillance ordinances. And I can say that what the council has in front of them today is a gold standard. I want to recognize and applaud Grace Wilkins' amazing leadership on this ordinance, but I also want to emphasize and applaud this council as you have all put so much care, debate, and consideration into crafting this ordinance to achieve what would truly benefit the community. The surveillance ordinance is important, and I hope you pass it today because it brings power back to the public. The police cannot be the sole arbitrators of what is deemed crime and what is deemed safety. I know this may sound paradoxical, but it really is a simple concept we all know, which is checks and balances. So let me explain with an example of where we've already lost checks and balances with surveillance. At the beginning of 2025, the Trump administration deemed pro-Palestinian speech to be terrorist speech. Frankly, the executive branch has the broad authority to make that kind of determination. The administration then announced that immigrant visas could be revoked if the immigrants engaged in that speech, and that they would use social media surveillance to detect it. By the way, these were AI technologies that were unverified and could have made many mistakes. Then 404 Media reported that ICE agents were using an app made by Palantir with facial recognition to scan people's faces, identify their immigration status, and connect them to their social media accounts to see whether they had engaged in what this administration considered terrorist speech, a connection between people's online and offline personas. Another way to think about this is social scoring. I researched this issue and wrote about it last summer when I worked at the Center for Democracy and Technology in DC. The Trump administration targeted immigrants and argued that they did not have constitutional free speech protections, which, by the way, other legal scholars argue is false. But this didn't begin with the Trump administration. It's actually since the Obama administration, the executive branch has consistently expanded the surveillance apparatus directed at immigrants. And because of how immigration law works, the executive branch has extraordinary and almost absolute power in using surveillance against immigrants. So what I'm really trying to highlight here is that this is an example, while it's focused on immigration, it's a system that sits with almost entirely within the executive branch, where agencies like ICE and the police departments operate. And in this system of absolute power, you can see profound human, digital, and constitutional rights violations. That is a broken system. But don't be fooled, that isn't just about immigration, and it won't just end at immigration. The point I'm trying to make is unchecked surveillance technologies in the hands of law enforcement are a proxy for that same kind of concentrated power. We don't know what they're collecting, who they're collecting on, and what kind of details and narratives they are making. They have this kind of absolute power when we allow surveillance technologies. And we all know the saying, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And passing a surveillance ordinance is getting rid of that absolute power. It's by giving power back to the people. So first, I hope you pass this ordinance tonight, but I also want to leave the council with a warning. The ordinance creates an important process for requiring surveillance technologies to come before the city council for approval, right? But I want to urge this council and future councils to take social media surveillance just as seriously. It's not a matter of looking at public profiles online, even if the data exists and is accessible. It's the questions of what data is being scraped, what algorithms are being used, and what stories are being constructed and construed about people, and who gets access to the data. I know the ordinance prohibits selling the data to private parties, but I would go one step further. Social media surveillance and the making of social scores of people, whatever that benchmark and for whatever that reason, shouldn't be within any government's hands, from our local government all the way to our federal government. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Stuart Levy. I live in Champaign, but I work and spend a fair bit of my time in Urbana. I'd like to speak in support of the surveillance ordinance. Thank you, Grace, and all who've advocated for it. And I think the angle I want to take is follow the example of the librarians, which this ordinance will let us do. Librarians have a tradition of protecting the privacy of their patrons, to the point that the woman who became, for a while, the head librarian at the University of Illinois in a previous job had been leading, I think, the Columbia Library, and the police came and wanted to find out what such and such particular people had been reading, and she was able to say, I have no idea, we do not keep those records. The library was deliberate in determining what information needed to be kept for how long, and getting rid of information that did not need to be kept. That's a really important principle. And the connection with this, of course, is that with the surveillance ordinance in place, in principle, the city and its population can know what technologies are being brought in, which ones are being applied, and there's space to criticize them. If surveillance technologies are brought in without review except by the people who want to use them, that is opening the way for people coming in and finding out, where have you been, where are you going, what do you think? We don't need that. Bhavna said it, power corrupts. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Jane McClintock. I'm a resident of Urbana, and I've talked to probably quite a few of you over the time that we've been considering this. I support the ordinance I think it's a the surveillance ordinance, I think it's a common sense measure that is really quite agnostic to any particular technology. You know, personally, I have some concerns about license plate readers, whether they're effective, you know, whether they're safe, but this technology really is not for or against any particular technology. I think it's a common sense measure that's going to help us make informed decisions as a community. And I think, you know, from the whole history of Urbana discussing license plate readers, there's definitely a lot of community interest in participating in that debate, and I think this gives an avenue for people to be informed and have their voices heard. So appreciate all the work on it, Grace, for sure, on the leadership, and everybody on tagging along with it for this whole process. Hope we can get it across the finish line today. So thanks for your service.
My name is Karen Medina, and I live in Champaign, but I spend a lot of time in Urbana. Other people have pointed out the people at the table about the technologies. And I guess what I want to point out is that the technology companies also have a stake in the data, that they, if you ask them not to sell the data, they're gonna forget to not do it. They're going to do it because that's how they make their money. So even if a city has said, we want the cameras turned off, we want them taken down, it takes them so long to take them down, to turn them off, and to stop selling the data. So, and there's nobody checking to make sure that that happens, because basically it's a huge company and you have very little oversight on them. You're a tiny town in, how many towns do they have where they are selling these technologies? And so my concern is that as long as the companies are making money, they're not gonna want to stop making money. And that is also extremely scary. So I just wanted to point that aspect out as well. Thank you. And good job on this is a really good piece of legislation. I really, really, really appreciate all the work you did on it.
Okay, we are going to read the public comments that came in to email now.
Dear City Council, I am writing to urge you to please vote yes to pass a bill to ban the sale of new fur products in Urbana. The world is progressing away from fur. Several fashion weeks such as London, Melbourne, and Copenhagen have banned fur, including Chicago. 22 EU countries have banned fur farming. Norway and Sweden just this year already. 16 U.S. cities have banned fur sales. There's a federal mink farm ban sitting with the Senate. 1,600 brands are fur-free, with Marc Jacobs, Max Mara, and Neiman Marcus having enacted fur-free policies due to public outcry. Here are just a few more, but very pressing reasons to support this humane measure. Animals who are slaughtered for fur endure tremendous suffering. Animals raised on fur farms typically spend their entire lives in cramped and filthy cages. Fur farmers typically use the cheapest killing methods available, including suffocation, electrocution, gas, and poison. Fur farms are reservoirs and transmission vectors for dangerous zoonotic diseases, including SARS, coronaviruses that threaten public health, including in the city. COVID-19 infections have been confirmed at fur farms in Europe and the U.S., and scientific studies have linked mink, raccoon dogs, and foxes, the animals most commonly farmed for their fur, to a variety of coronaviruses. The fur production process is energy intensive and has a significant environmental impact, including air and water pollution. Runoff from the fur production process contains high concentrations of phosphorus, nitrogen, which are the most common forms of water pollution in the U.S. I truly hope you will support this compassionate and common sense measure to pass this bill soon. Thank you, Hector.
Oh, Ms. Hersey, go ahead.
Okay. Good evening. Please approve a ban on all fur sales in Urbana. The fur industry is incredibly cruel. It is barbaric and outdated. No one needs to wear an animal's fur to be warm. It is extreme violence inflicted on other living beings. It's just wrong, and Urbana is better than this. Thank you for your compassion, Irene Sewell.
Chris.
To the Urbana City Council. My name is Ilir Sulejmani. I have been a part of the Urbana community for over 18 years. I am speaking today in support of the ordinance to ban fur in Urbana. Fur can only be obtained from slaughtering animals. This is inherently violent, but the actual practices of the fur industry are especially brutal. The fur industry operates in one of two ways. Most of the time, animals are bred on farms and confined to small, filthy cages where they stir in distress and panic until they are electrocuted and skinned, sometimes while they are still alive. Other times, they are trapped in the wild, where the contraptions dig into their limbs and restrain them until trappers return to bash their skulls or shoot them dead. All this injury, distress, suffering, and death is inflicted just for clothing items that could be made with other materials. It is needless violence. The fur industry also devastates the environment. Fur farms and other intensive animal farming operations are one of the leading causes of the climate crisis, according to a meta-analysis published by the scientific journal Frontiers in Animal Science. The authors advised that the sector be prohibited entirely since the effect was inherent. Trapping wild animals for fur incurs other equally damaging forms of environmental harm, including the near collapse of environmental engineer species like the North American beaver. Disturbing ecosystems in this way enhances the damage of climate change. Lastly, fur farms create and rapidly spread zoonotic pandemics like COVID-19, as confirmed in the leading scientific journal Nature. COVID brought suffering and death to our community. We must prevent future pandemics by any means we have. This includes no longer enabling the industries that cause them. The fur lobby claims that fur bans damage small businesses. This is incorrect. California banned fur sales in 2019. The fur shops that were there before the ban went into effect are still thriving. They have converted into fur storage, maintenance, and cleaning shops. When we allow the sale of fur products in this city, we allow more funding and support to go to violent, unsustainable practices. The Urbana community wants a city that lives up to its values and shuts the door to animal-abusing industries like fur. The state of California has already banned fur entirely, and 25 countries have banned fur farming. It's time for us to join the right side of history. Please help us make Urbana a more humane, sustainable, and sanitary place. Support the fur ban ordinance. Thank you.
Mary Alice.
Hello, I'm writing to request that you ban the sale of all fur products in Urbana, and I request that you read the glowing aloud at your meeting. The global fur industry causes severe systemic, physical, and psychological suffering to roughly 100 million animals killed annually. Approximately 85% of the world's fur is harvested from animals raised in intensive confinement on industrial factory farms. Because the industry prioritizes preserving pelt quality over animal welfare, the housing, handling, and slaughter practices are optimized for cost and skin preservation rather than minimizing pain. Extreme confinement and housing conditions. Wild, wide-roaming, and often solitary species, including minks, foxes, chinchillas, and raccoons, and dogs, are confined for their entire short lives in barren wire mesh battery cages. Severe restriction. Cages typically measure about 1 square meter, completely blocking natural movement. No natural behaviors. Minks are denied water for swimming, foxes cannot dig, and chinchillas are deprived of sand baths. Injurious flooring. Constant standing on unyielding wire mesh cuts into sensitive paw pads, causing bent feet, sores, and lameness. Filthy environments. Waste collects directly beneath the open wire floors, exposing animals to highly concentrated acetic ammonia fumes. Psychological trauma and abnormal behaviors. The combination of cramped conditions, lack of environmental enrichment, and proximity to other animals includes chronic stress and severe mental degradation. Stereotypic behaviors. Stressed animals engage in continuous repetitive pacing, head bobbing, circling, and rocking. Self-mutilation. Extreme boredom and anxiety lead animals to chew on their own tails, skin, and limbs, leading to exposed bone and infected wounds. Cannibalization and aggression. Overcrowded competitive conditions cause frequent fighting, limb biting, infanticide, and the cannibalization of dead cage mates. Overbreeding, physical deformities. Some facilities selectively breed hyper-obese monster foxes with massive folds of fat to maximize skin size, rendering them unable to move normally. Inhumane slaughter methods. Because commercial producers must keep the external fur pelts completely intact, standard humane slaughter regulations, which protect livestock, either do not apply or completely bypassed on fur farms. Anal and genital electrocution. Commonly used on foxes and raccoon dogs, operators attach clamps to the mouth and anus to send a fatal shock through the body, causing cardiac arrest while the animal is frequently fully conscious. Gassing. Minks are frequently packed into boxes and exposed to carbon monoxide or carbon dioxide. Because minks are semi-aquatic, dive-adapted animals, they can hold their breath, making the suffocation process painfully prolonged. And neck breaking. Rabbits and other small animals are frequently killed via crude blunt force trauma to the skull or manual cervical dislocation. Skinning alive. Investigators by groups like Humane World for Animals have documented instances where poorly executed stunning or cheap slaughter methods result in animals waking up or being skinned while still fully conscious. Secondary harms, trapping and public health. Beyond factor farming, the fur trade perpetuates significant environmental and societal risks. Wild trapping brutality. Millions of wild coyotes, beavers, and lynxes are caught using steel jaw, leg hold traps, or body-crushing snares. Trapped wild animals endure agonizing blood loss, dehydration, and predator attacks for days, occasionally chewing off their own limbs to escape. Zoonotic disease reservoirs. The high-density, high-stress conditions of fur farms act as ideal vectors for dangerous viral mutations. Hundreds of mink and fox farms have suffered massive outbreaks of zoonotic viruses like COVID-19 and highly avian influenza H5N1. Toxic chemical processing. Raw animal pelts naturally decompose. Keeping them stable for garments requires intensive processing with heavy toxic chemicals that permanently alter the skin. Global policy and corporate shifts. Growing public and scientific condemnation of this systematic cruelty has triggered a steep decline in the fur market. Organizations such as Fur Free Alliance actively track legislative progress. Dozens of nations, including the United Kingdom, Norway, Austria, Croatia, and Italy, have implemented total bans on fur farming. Concurrently, prominent major fashion retailers like Gucci, Prada, Chanel, and Armani have permanently eliminated animal fur from their collections, shifting industry standards towards synthetic and plant-based textile innovations. Thank you for taking the time to consider this important issue. Tammy.
Grace.
Thank you. This is from Sharon Irish. Please read this comment into the record. Dear hardworking city council members, thanks to a lot of hard work over the last 2 years, thank you, Grace Wilkin especially, you now have the opportunity to vote in favor of the surveillance oversight ordinance. This ordinance allows us as residents to learn about and comment on possible purchase or leasing of new surveillance technologies that are being considered for implementation. I continue to be concerned about the use and storage of data collected with these technologies, given the rapid shifts in information technology in the use of third-party vendors. We need to move deliberately to monitor, approve, and/or pause the adoption of surveillance technology because of crucial trust issues. How and for how long is the data stored securely? With whom is it shared? We, the residents, need the 30-day window to evaluate and weigh in on these steps. Third-party technology companies do not necessarily have our best interests in mind, and we need to ensure their recognition of and compliance with our privacy and safety concerns. We need to ensure common sense deployment of new technologies, which could also serve as a model for other communities. Thank you, Sharon Irish, Urbana, Illinois. Was that all of them?
Is that all of them?
Sarah Nixon one I don't think got read. Did anyone have that to read? It's in the subject line to read. I can do it, just checking if anyone planned to. Sorry. Sorry. Dear Mayor Williams and members of the Urbana City Council, my name is Sarah Nixon, and I'm a worker and taxpayer in Urbana. I'm writing to urge the City Council to vote in favor of ordinance number 2026-07-021 to ban the commercial retail sale of new fur products in our city. While Urbana may not have a dedicated luxury fur, passing this ordinance is a vital step in aligning our local laws with our community's exemplary ethical values. Because the commercial fur industry hides its practices from consumers behind curtains of luxury branding and polished storefronts, it's easy to look away from the reality. But we must confront exactly what it trades in: immense unnecessary suffering and systemic barbaric torture. The truth is that animals on factory fur farms spend their entire lives confined to cramped, filthy, feces-encrusted wire cages, driven to self-mutilation and insanity by confinement, pacing endlessly out of distress. When it comes time to harvest their coats, they are not granted a peaceful death. To preserve the pelt, they are brutally suffocated in gas chambers or painfully electrocuted through their rectums. They die writhing in agony so that their skins remain unmarred for consumer vanity. Whether this happens in mass production facility or on a smaller scale, the moral reality is identical. We are talking about extreme cruelty for fashion. We are talking about helpless, sentient beings who feel terror and pain, whose tortured lives are violently stripped away just to become an accessory or decorative trim on a jacket collar or a pom-pom on a beanie. The animals trapped in this industry have no voice, no legal rights, and no escape. Their only hope rests on the conscience of leaders like you to step in. The true social and animal welfare means recognizing that an animal's life is worth more than a vanity product, regardless of the size of the operation. We do not need new fur items to stay warm or fashionable in 2026. Beautiful, high-quality alternatives are widely available. Urbana has a proud history of progress and empathy, and passing this ordinance is a vital chance to extend that protection to the most vulnerable. In doing so, we join a growing global and statewide movement to declare that cruelty has no place in our economy. Thank you for your conscience and service to the community. Sarah Nixon.
With no further public input, we will move on to staff report. We now have a report of the Urbana Housing Needs Study from the Champaign County Regional Planning Commission and the Community Development Department.
Hello, good evening, everybody. So tonight we are going to be introducing the Housing Needs Study, which has been in the works for a long time. This will be one presentation of many, hopefully, and we will have another presentation to follow at the next meeting on August 3rd. So just as a note, these slides will be circulated to anyone who would like, the council members or the public. Just please email the city clerk or the planning division and we'll get those to you. And then also a handout was circulated in the council memo packet and also left in the back for folks. It just has key terminology and definitions to help follow along as we present. So my role here tonight is simply to frame where we are in the process with a project timeline. First I'll start with the intent of the housing needs study. So the City of Urbana hired the Champaign County Regional Plan Commission to conduct the Urbana Housing Needs Study, and the study provides essential data, analysis, and input from residents, developers, and businesses in the community related to housing needs, development, and affordability that will support future planning and policy decisions. So the resolution was passed for an intergovernmental agreement, solidifying that IGA for professional services in November of 2025. Then over the winter, basically, JD and the planning team started the data analysis in the spring. So in April of this year, we conducted the resident survey and the landlord survey, and we'll speak more about that later. But that was a big effort to get direct input from the community. And then we also had stakeholder interviews. Where we are tonight is the opportunity to introduce some of these sort of fundamental principles, specifically when it comes to data gathering. And we will be following presentations to the council with continued public outreach, so a series of open houses and engagement opportunities, which we'll happily share more about later in the process. And then our plan is to publish the report in its entirety by the fall. And again, just a quick summary of the presentation. So tonight we're going to be talking about data gathering, and then on August 3rd, we're going to be introducing some of the existing conditions findings, which will include data from our resident survey and landlord survey. And we felt it was helpful to sort of set the foundation for this analysis and introduce the topics covered in the housing needs study, starting with the data, kind of walking through that methodology so that we all have the same foundation for discussion. And I think that will help inform our conversation around the existing conditions as well. Tonight, we'll touch on topics such as the special census, and obviously next week's presentation, we'll share information about that soon. So we have got about 10 minutes on the docket. I know it's a busy night, so we'll definitely have an opportunity for questions tonight, or feel free to reach out to us by email, and we can circulate those or continue to answer questions next week as well. This is just the beginning of the conversation. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to JD. You might want to introduce yourself.
Thank you, Olivia. My name is JD McClanahan, and I'm a Planner 3 at Champaign County Regional Planning Commission. Like Olivia mentioned, we contracted with the city to conduct this Urbana Housing Needs Study in winter of last year and have been working on it since then. Also, like she mentioned, today the focus is going to be on kind of the data gathering, the background of the data that we use, some issues we ran into, and how we tried to approach those. The contents of this presentation are going to be dense, but I'm going to try to get through it as fast as possible, just in the interest of your time. But like Olivia said, we'll be providing the slides and happy to take questions after the fact. So tonight, like she mentioned, next week we're going to be talking more about existing conditions, but tonight the focus is on understanding the special census, looking at 2020 census, issues that came up from that, what Urbana has done since then, and kind of what the identified problems that have come up with Census Bureau data have been over the last 6 years, and then focusing on, in the Urbana Housing Needs Study, how we approached some of those issues through existing conditions, public outreach, and then future modeling sections of the plan. So first, we're going to focus on the special census and how it applies to Urbana. So this is probably not news to anyone, but the COVID-19 pandemic threw a wrench in a lot of things, including the April 2020 gathering of the decennial census, particularly in Urbana's college town context. The fact that a lot of students went home for spring break and didn't come back affected how that count happened later in the spring. And these issues did not just affect the every 10-year census data, but also other data products from the Census Bureau, like the American Community Survey that build off of the decennial census in order to develop their data. And just kind of one example of some of the discrepancies that came up from this data. So up top there, you see University of Illinois non-online enrollment data. So from 2014 to 2024, the university indicated more than 4,400 growth in undergraduate enrollment and more than 6,600 growth in overall enrollment at the Urbana-Champaign campus. Over that same time, American Community Survey data for Champaign County has shown about a 4,500 person population growth, which makes sense with those trends. However, looking at kind of college cohort, the college-age population, the ACS says that there's been a nearly 600 person decrease over that same time period. And then looking at people enrolled in undergraduate institutions has said that there was more than a 4,800 person decrease. So those trends between university and ACS are divergent and unusual to see. So that's talking about the county at large. Some of these data questions were particularly acute in Urbana because the 2020 census stated that Urbana had lost population over the last 10 years. As you can see here, from 2010 census to 2020 census, Census Bureau identified a nearly 3,000 person population loss in Urbana, despite the fact that the Census Bureau's most recent population estimates at that time had thought that Urbana should have about a 1,000 person gain over that time period. Because of this discrepancy, Urbana commissioned a special census, which was conducted in October 2024, and really was targeted at the specific blocks in the city where it was believed there was the largest perceived disparity between 2020 counted population and actual population. The Census Bureau published the data from that special census in February of 2025, and in that study found an increase of more than 2,400 people in those studied blocks, 2,400 more people than were found in the 2020 census. Based on that, after that data was announced, Urbana announced an official Census 2025 population of 40,795. And it's my understanding that this is the number that y'all have been able to use for block grants and other kind of population apportioned programs. However, that increase has not necessarily been reflected in the public data sets that are currently available. Like I mentioned, American Community Survey is a Census Bureau product that builds off of the census, and the Census Bureau also puts out annual population estimates. From those, the most recent ACS found about 1,000 person increase from 2020, and the 2025 population estimate found about a 1,300 or 1,400 person increase from 2020. So showing growth, but not at the scale that would be expected based on the special census. There are a couple possible reasons for this. One could just be a time lag in getting special census fully incorporated into these data sets, as well as kind of because the special census is a fairly unusual process, difficulty getting that data fully incorporated into the other data sets just because of methodology issues. And in the next few slides, we'll just look at a couple kind of small scale examples of where those issues have popped up. So this first slide is looking at the census tracts that are kind of the Urbana portion of main campus on the university. So south of Springfield, north of Pennsylvania, and west of Busey Avenue. This used to be one census tract, and then in the last decade was split into two. So between these now two tracts, the Census Bureau identified more than 1,700 person population loss between 2010 and 2020. The special census For the 5901, which is the tract in the bottom right, the special census identified more than 360 people that weren't there in 2020, but the ACS data since then has actually shown continued population loss even after 2020. The ACS data is saying that population has continued to decrease by more than 250 people. Similarly, for that kind of top left census tract, the Census Bureau found almost 1,000 people that weren't counted, or the Special Census found almost 1,000 people that weren't counted in 2020. And the ACS has shown a population increase, but only by about 600, so not at the full scale that would be expected. Similarly, tract 111, which is basically between the engineering quad and downtown Urbana, kind of south of University, north of Springfield, 2010 to 2020, Census Bureau showed more than 600 people population loss. The Special Census found an additional, or reclaimed an additional 542 people, but the ACS has said that actually since 2020, that tract has continued to lose population, nearly 100 people. And lastly, this is not a tract that was studied in the Special Census, but was also noteworthy. Tract 60 is south of the University of Illinois campus. So the population in this tract is basically a line of single-family homes along First Street, but then most of the population is either in Orchard Downs or in the FAR and PAR university residences. The Census Bureau said that there was a 90-person loss 2010 to 2020, but has said that there's been more than 360 people lost since 2020. We are not aware of any significant university facility closures or large vacancy issues in Orchard Downs or in those dorms. So that is another kind of unexpected data finding. So that's just kind of some specific issues identified, but doing this study was not the first time that we came to be aware of some of these issues. RPC is the federally recognized metropolitan planning organization for our region, or MPO. And in that capacity, we are required to publish a long-range transportation plan every 5 years that looks 25 years in the future for transportation planning. And as part of that, we do population projections that are modeled at the traffic analysis zone, which is a geography that's kind of smaller than the census tract, and then aggregated to get the regional population change. In the current LRTP 2050, this was drafted from 2023 to 2024 and then adopted in December of 2024 with Urbana as one of the constituent agencies that approved this plan. When we were doing this work at RPC, we were aware of some of these issues that were coming up after 2020. So we developed a methodology looking at ACS and decennial census data, identifying issues, and specifically based on the identified low count of university students in 2020. After identifying those, the next step was to prepare kind of that base year 2020 existing conditions data for our models. And then last step would be to calculate the growth rate in order to predict population into the future. As we were doing this work to develop the 2020 base year, we ran into some interesting findings from Census Bureau data. So both these graphs show ACS data over time, and then contrast that with the red dot, which is the 2020 census. So the graph on the left, you can see overall population predictions for Champaign County, where the 2020 census had more than a 4,000 person count below what the ACS had predicted our county would have in 2020. In contrast, the graph on the right is looking at the number of households in Champaign County, and actually the 2020 census found more than 1,500 more households in the county in 2020, which is a weird diverging trend to occur. That divergence could be due to a couple of factors. So first thought would be maybe the issue was that group quarters population, which is like students in dorms, people in nursing homes, people in correctional facilities. If that population dropped off significantly, that might explain the difference. However, as you can see on the graph on the left, the census population for group quarters was below ACS, but only by about 400 people, which is not enough to explain that big divergence. However, the other explanation could be a difference in the size of households that could explain that divergence from the last graph. When we started to look at the household data, the Census Bureau reports on the number of people in one-person households, two-person households, three-person, et cetera. And then once you get to 7-person, it just says 7+ person for anything above that. Looking at the ACS data for 7+ person households, the ACS was indicating that the average size of 7+ person households in the years leading up was more than 40 people in a household, which is an unusually large household. However, in the 2020 census, it identified 7+ person households, the average size being about 7.7 people, which is more kind of what you would expect from that cohort. So all that to say, we knew that there were issues in 2020 census, but also our analysis came up with some issues in the ACS data leading up to that as well. So what to do about that? As RPC was working on preparing that kind of base year data, the methodology that was developed was identifying those traffic analysis zones with high student populations, comparing the census data with other available data sources, and doing manual quality assurance and review by local agencies, looking at, okay, how does the Census Bureau data compare with other data sources that we know of, other local knowledge, how do these compare? And then similarly, the future projections model was tested against a variety of ACS 5-year and 1-year estimates to try to normalize across some of the discrepancies seen. And again, with manual quality assurance and comparison with local agency knowledge to ensure that trends aligned with on-the-ground observations. And this will be the last graph before we move on to kind of Urbana housing needs stuff. So based on all of that work, you can see in this graph how RPC's work compared to another agency that does county-level population modeling, which is the Illinois Department of Public Health. So you can see that top gray line is Illinois Department of Public Health's 2015 models for Champaign County populations. You can see that that's kind of the most optimistic or ambitious population growth projection. In contrast, the yellow line at the bottom is the Illinois Public Health new estimates as of 2021, incorporating the 2020 census data, where they kind of adjusted their estimates pretty significantly down in response to the 2020 data. In contrast, the blue line was the old long-range transportation plan that RPC put together that was in line with, but a little less ambitious than the older public health model. And then in contrast, the most recent RPC plan, LRTP 2050, we also adjusted down, but based on that kind of local knowledge, local data processing, did not believe that the adjustment down that IDPH did was fully warranted. So it adjusted it down by what we believed was a more defensible amount. So all that to say, there's been a lot of work done for the study and also in the past few years on kind of looking at local population estimate issues in Urbana and in Champaign County generally. So how did we approach this for the Urbana housing needs study specifically? First, looking at existing conditions data, we had to acknowledge the fact that ACS is kind of the most widely available and detailed source on a variety of national and local housing and demographic data. It was going to be really hard to do this study and just not include ACS data at all. So based on that, we had a variety of ways that we handle ACS data in the study, including discussing concerns and providing caveats within the text of the study where we believe they are warranted when discussing ACS data, providing comparison data, including change over time in comparison to other geographies in order to better contextualize Urbana data, And then also avoiding leaning too much on kind of specific findings, so not overanalyzing small changes over time or small differences between geographies, recognizing the kind of issues with trying to get too precise with this data. In addition, we worked to supplement ACS and other Census Bureau data with other data sources. So this included more precise federal data sources like U.S. Postal Service unit counts, home mortgage data, as well as Federal Reserve data, as well as supplementing it with local primary source data like county recorder data, Urbana's building safety department data, and then housing data from a variety of local housing agencies and stakeholders. Additionally, we conducted public outreach to help supplement all of this data. So we did this all concurrently, but first is a public survey that was distributed and publicized via a variety of methods that received 325 responses from local residents. Additionally, we conducted a landlord study that was distributed via the Urbana Rental Registry contact list, which received 134 responses, representing about a third of Urbana rental units. And then finally, we did 12 stakeholder interviews with local housing stakeholders, just trying to get their understanding of kind of the local housing landscape. With this outreach information, we weren't seeking to kind of definitively disprove or replace Census Bureau data, but to provide additional context and nuance on where we needed to dive deeper or kind of compare between these data sets. So a couple examples of instances where differences were found would be the ACS identifies Urbana's rental vacancy rate as nearly 10% in their most recent data. But from the landlord survey that we conducted, it was found that it was between 1.3 and 5.5%. So in our approach, not saying it's definitely 9.9% or it's definitely 1.3%, but understanding that that's a pretty big divergence and not trying to attach too concretely to either of those points of the range. Additionally, looking at kind of changes in housing costs and affordability over time, based on ACS data, the housing costs in Urbana have, including both rent overall and renter and homeowner, housing costs, according to ACS, have stayed below both inflation over the last decade and below local income growth. So according to ACS, at the broad level, we haven't had a significant change in worsening in housing costs in our community, but that was not the perception that either the public survey or stakeholder interviews had of our local situation and change over time. So similarly, trying to understand what the nuances and what the issues were with different data sets to try to understand how to get the best information out of both of those, all of those data sets. And then finally, looking at kind of future projections of future need. The methodology that we've developed will rely on that locally approved LRTP RPC plan growth rate in order to kind of model future household growth. We'll rely on more precise USPS data on housing units in the community to try to understand what the current residential unit count is. And then finally, within those kind of models, we'll provide a range both of kind of baseline starting population levels and growth scenarios to reflect the range of possibility and uncertainty that we need to deal with when talking about these issues. So like Olivia mentioned, we'll be back next week to talk about some of the kind of beginning existing conditions analysis, but I'm happy to talk about any questions that anyone has on kind of methodology, data background, et cetera.
Thank you. Mary Alice.
Hi, thank you. I had a question. I think I know the answer, but I just want to be sure. When you were comparing the amounts for ACS and the special census that we conducted, were those comparing what was measured at 2020 and the increase, or was that a change between a different time zone?
Like the tract level analysis. So
So is that 2020 versus the special census, I guess is my question.
Yeah, so that middle bullet point is 2020 census counts, and then special census counts for that geography.
Okay, so 2020, it was less than 542, so we gained 542 since the 2020 official count.
Yes, yeah, so we, between 2010 count and 2020 count, we lost 624, and then based on the special census in that tract, we gained 542
But we didn't gain
back.
542 from
Overall,
2010.
no. So yeah, it's still showing a decrease overall since 2010. Yes.
Okay. And I know that there's been a lot of conversation nationally about the impact of COVID on especially towns such as ours. I'm wondering if you've had any communication or discussion with people in towns similar to ours with similar discrepancies between ACS 1.5 and the census.
Within the scope of this study, we didn't do any kind of peer community direct outreach. I'd have to ask some of my coworkers at RPC in terms of kind of the LRTP methodology. I would imagine that there were probably conversations as RPC was working on that, but not within the actual scope of this study. That there wasn't any kind of a
I didn't think that you did it in scope, but people have conversations.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
We do have peer community analysis and comparisons provided just on a data basis, but not anecdotal communication.
Yeah, like comparing ACS data between peer communities, but not kind of, direct conversations.
Chris?
Thank you. Thinking about local primary source data, do we have there's a registration fee, correct, for all properties that are rented?
Mm-hmm.
So every landlord has to pay this fee, correct?
Yes.
So we have every address that rents.
Yes, everyone that's
So we could get you only have 36% of the landlords surveyed, but we could get a list. We have a list of every rental property in Urbana, correct?
Yes, and that's the list that was used for outreach for that landlord survey.
For them to talk, take the survey.
Yes.
Well, I'm trying to piggyback some of Esther's thoughts here. That do we know how many rental units there are in Urbana, roughly?
We do. I don't have it off the top of my head at the moment.
That's okay. It's around 18 to 19,000, but it's I don't have it memorized either. Is it possible to get a better handle on what the vacancy rate is? But it can't be just 1.3 to 9.9. I mean, what can we somehow get a better number on that?
I can speak. When we were doing the landlord survey, that is what the kind of 1.3 to 5.5% number that is based on that survey, with the range being in order to make it feasible for landlords to take it. There were some kind of multiple choice questions with ranges of I manage between this many and this many units versus having them type in the exact number. So that range of percentages was based kind of on the range of what the top and bottom range of what the answers that they provided were. But we did ask for that vacancy data and got that 1.3 to 5.5% range from the survey.
Yeah, but it's only 36% of the landlords. Can we? I mean, I don't know. I just wish we could get a better number. Also, about affordability. What I did, and it took me 8 hours to do it, an 8-hour day. I went 5 blocks, just 5-block radius, counted 72 apartment buildings in my little area, and then found out what the cost of the rent was on every one, or tried to, because those that were vacant didn't give me a price. But I would say about good 75 to 80% of the apartments gave me a price. So I'm wondering, is it possible for you to figure out what apartments cost in Urbana? For one bedroom, what Esther asked for was 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, 3 bedroom.
We do, based on a previous project that RPC conducted, we do have some like from rental listing data that we purchased that we used for some of the analysis in this study. And then for the landlord survey, I believe we'll talk about the findings of that more in detail next week. I think the question formatting might not have been exactly as Esther requested, but we did ask how many units do you have of this size, and then of your units of this size, what's your kind of average rent that you charge for a unit of this size? So we have very similar data to what Esther requested earlier, if not the exact formatting that she was asking for.
Okay, thanks for your work, and I'll let other.
I think I didn't want to just overstep.
Mayor Williams.
I feel like I know this because I asked this question, I think, when we talked about it last week. But to what Esther was asking, specifically the $100 increments and whatnot, is that information doable?
When we asked about it, like I mentioned earlier, it was kind of multiple choice kind of range.
Gotcha.
So I don't believe our increments were that small. But I think it was about like 250 or so.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
Grace.
Thank you. Thanks for this presentation, and I have two-ish questions. I'm sorry if this was addressed earlier, but will that be a later presentation to give us the results of the housing needs survey?
Yes.
Okay. And what about the idea of kind of housing conditions and city code enforcement and how that comes to play in this context in this report?
Yeah, I think we have already done some analysis based on kind of rental, based on the Urbana Building Safety Division, some of their like unit grades as part of kind of the standard inspection. So that data has been analyzed and is part of the report that we're working on. I do not believe that the specific data set that was referred to earlier about kind of reported issues and then whether those were remediated, that has not been analyzed at this point. But I would think just kind of depending on capacity and staff levels, that's data that the city has, so there should be an opportunity for some kind of analysis on that.
Thank you.
James.
Thank you. There's been a number thrown around recently about Champaign's housing deficit or unit needs, or more specifically, their vacancy rate. And I'm highly skeptical of it because of the methodology that the city of Champaign used to get those numbers. They basically asked large landlords to report their vacancy, which I would say, from a business perspective, they should be inclined to say that there's not much vacancy. They don't want to show weakness so that they can continue to charge higher prices. So how do we, in our process in establishing what's out there, not get sucked into the risk of letting specifically landlords define what the vacancy or the demand for housing is in Urbana?
Yeah. And yeah, I think this is a similar thing that, as the kind of findings of the study are presented, we can get into this in more depth. But I think a few different things. So like I mentioned, we conducted kind of similar survey of landlords and got similar data to what Champaign found. In terms of looking at kind of modeling future needs, our data does not rely on that landlord reported vacancy rate. So I think, like I mentioned in the second to last slide, so as we're conducting the kind of future both kind of existing vacancy and projecting future vacancy, we're relying on those kind of local population models of households, as well as USPS has very detailed data on the number of residential units, just because they have to have that to be able to deliver the mail to everybody and they publish it at the block level every 6 months. So using using kind of that survey data to inform our future actions, but not just relying on that local landlord reported vacancy and taking it as a given that that's exactly
Yeah,
accurate.
thank you for that. That gives me a little more confidence. I mean, at least we have an active rental registry, so we know how many units are out there.
Yeah.
Champaign doesn't even know that, so
Yeah.
they're working more blind than we are. But I just feel like there has to be, I don't know, an economic driver or something we could look at from a standpoint of getting the city real data on what housing is available. Because if there's a lot of housing available that's not being utilized, that might be part of a conversation of solution to what we feel is a housing need. And it's just a question of affordability, not whether we have the units or not. And we really need to dig into that in a way that we trust.
Yeah.
Thanks.
I do have a couple questions. I want to kind of piggyback on Mary Alice's question from earlier about engagement. Before this study is complete, will there be any meaningful engagement happening with renters or families or seniors, voucher holders, immigrants? Like, will there be any of that happens, or will this be strictly based on data and numbers?
I will say for the initial survey that we conducted, it was that outreach was conducted primarily as an online survey, but I think city and RPC staff did work to try to get that information in front of as many kind of community stakeholders, community partner agencies as was possible. But I believe Olivia will kind of be able to talk more about kind of looking into the future.
Yes, so we'll be sharing the sort of a snapshot of the survey results next week, and then planning staff over the next couple months are going to be making a concerted, targeted effort to make sure that we're getting input and engagement with all populations that represent our city. So I can't speak to that strategy right now because it's still in development, but we are actively thinking about that and putting together a phase 2 public outreach plan to ensure that all voices are heard through the process.
Good, thank you so much, because I'm definitely concerned about how the unhoused populations will be accounted for, those living in motels or couch surfing, or just living in non-traditional arrangements. I would love to know the plan to make sure that they are included. And finally, I also want to know if there is any possibility when this is done to have any demographic breakdown, very specifically.
Of the public outreach, or just of kind of city population as a whole?
City population. Okay, so I'm thinking of when we're considering housing and affordable housing, and thinking about how we address the real needs of the community. And so knowing where the need really is and how will that be broken down, not just demographically, but also according to who can afford what, a lady in public comment spoke and made me think about that as well. I just want to know, how will we know that we're doing something that's actually going to work for the people we serve?
Yeah, and I will say the existing conditions analysis that we have currently has worked to do a variety of kind of demographic breakdowns, and looking at demographics across the city, and then looking at kind of specific populations and how they relate to specific housing issues. So that we have kind of started that work to try to do that kind of more breaking it up by geography or by specific population. But yeah, I think that work can continue.
Okay, and I would also, I know I plan to schedule a meeting with you anyway, but because I want to discuss ways to reach those that may never do a survey or may never enter this room, because they should definitely be accounted for as well. Thank you. Ms. Hershey.
I guess my question is, of the Of the people that replied to your survey, how many of these people, did you only do apartments, or did you also consider people who are renting single-family homes?
The survey was open to kind of the general population, and then they were able to provide information about their housing type, their housing needs and concerns, et cetera. So we were looking for feedback from everybody.
Okay, so you don't have any idea how many responded saying that they rented single-family homes, two or three bedroom?
We have that data. I don't have it off the top of my head, but that data is in the survey.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, with no further questions, is there a motion? Just a presentation. Oh, that was just a presentation. I'm just reading what Darcy told me to say. Thank you. Okay, thank you for this presentation. So we are going to move to the next, which is, we have ordinance number 202607-021.
Nope, I'm so sorry. We are on our first item of new business, which is the resolution.
Okay, let me move up.
Resolution number 2026-07-043R.
Okay. You want me to say it again? Okay. Resolution number 202607-043R, a resolution approving an increase in the number of liquor licenses in the Class P designation for Sean and Cy Incorporated.
So, so that is going in the former Dollar General next to CIBM, Harbor Freight. This is a chain, essentially a chain Packer liquor store, similar to a Liquor Depot or Bunny's, I think is the other one, that will, Benny's, I'm sorry, not Bunny's. I am so sorry, Bunny's. Benny's. But similar to that's requesting a space on Cunningham. Thanks.
Okay, is there a motion?
Move approval of resolution number 2026-07-043R, resolution approving an increase in the number of liquor licenses and Class D designation for Sean and Sing Inc., DBA Beverage Genie, 1506 North Cunningham Avenue, Urbana.
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion? If not,
James?
oh, I'm sorry, James.
You're doing a good job, girl.
So I take it that this is something like a Friar Tuck or Benny's. I would certainly like an opportunity for a place where I could go do this kind of shopping that's not in Champaign, which is currently only Benny's, and so I will be supporting this.
Ms. Hershey?
Piggybacking on what James said, yeah, I have no problem with packaged liquors being sold. And I also would like to see something more varietal as far, Verdell's giving me that look. That's all right, Verdell. But anyway, I think that that would actually, and that is probably actually a very good location in the sense that of what the stores are in that area. I don't know if you've been, you got the beauty salon, you got not the salon, but the beauty store, and you got the Dollar General, and I think that's a good location. So I just want to say that I'll also be supporting this.
Okay, with no further discussion, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Nay.
No passes. Okay, all right, so that passes. The item is moved to regular agenda of the city council. All right, next we have ordinance number 202607-021. An ordinance amending Chapter 15 miscellaneous offenses and provisions of the Urbana City Code relating to trade in fur products, presented by Councilmember Wilkins.
Thank you. If I may present from here, this was an ordinance brought to me by some constituents who drafted what you have before you on the table. This was shared with city leadership and the city attorney a few months ago. Don't know if you had planned any input, but definitely curious at some point if there's input from city leadership on this, anything logistically. We have some slides we could share later. We have, if you'd like a presentation, we can. I can give you just the simpler version as well. From what these members of the public have looked into, and I think hopefully city confirming that there aren't currently fur sales retail place in Urbana. So this would have, not have a significant impact on existing local businesses, but a proactive measure to ensure that Urbana doesn't become a future market for new fur products. There is precedent with this. As was stated in some public comment, there are quite a few, actually many countries and quite a few states in the U.S. and different towns in different states in the U.S. that have enacted a similar ban on fur sales due to the cruel nature and unnecessary kind of nature of it. As you can see in the ordinance, this would have a $300 fine that would be effective 6 months after the passage of this ordinance. So if there were anyone planning to sell furs in Urbana, they can have some time to adjust, I suppose. There's definitions of what we mean by a fur product, and that this does not apply to things like wool, yarn, kind of things like that. There is an exemption for a used fur product, or one that is required for a religious practice or traditional, tribal, cultural, or spiritual purposes. And I believe those were the main points to cover. We're happy to take questions. Some of the members of the public who helped draft this are present. We can provide more information if there's a need. So I think it's all for now. Thank you.
Are there any questions? Oh, James.
So I think you just answered my first question, which was which businesses in Urbana does this impact? And it seems like the answer is none. And do we know that for sure? Do we have that as a certainty?
That was in the emails with city leadership. I'm not sure if they've verified that.
Because I do know that when this was considered in the city of Chicago, it did not pass, and that was because the businesses that were impacted seemed to be of a particular nature, and they felt targeted by the legislation. I understand why people are bringing this up and what the motivation for it is, but I'm a little. I'd like to know who we're impacting before we do it. The other question I had was, as a practical matter, who would do the enforcement for this? Is it you see something for sale and you report it to, I don't know, community development, or do you report it to the police, or how is it envisioned as being enforced? That's just a practical question.
So for feedback from staff in particular, we have not had the opportunity to dive into this just due to other pressing tasks that we're dealing with. We were made aware probably about 2 months ago that there was a group that was interested in bringing the policy, their ordinance for the ban of fur. We had some communication with Grace at that time of that interest. And then from my recollection through email. The ordinance was shared on July 16th. For staff to be able to take a look at this and to get all parties necessary at the table, that's going to take some time. Not because this isn't of interest right now, but we have a lot of other priorities that we're trying to work through. So at this moment, if I were to tell you who would be the person following up on that, we have no idea at this time, and I don't think the city is in the position to hire a specialist in particular for this ordinance in particular. We'll be happy to take a look at it and provide a timing down the line, but as of right now, we aren't able to provide some of the feedback that you all would like at this point.
And so my last question was, since we don't know that this impacts Urbana businesses, because it may not be something that needs regulation at this point in time, my final question would be is if we enact this, what possible kind of enforcement or how could we actually control this for internet sales? For example, wouldn't anyone who wants this just go and buy it online from Indiana or Ohio or wherever?
Ms. Hersey?
I guess my question is, does this stop the individual thing, not just a business, but people who actually own furs themselves? Or are we asking for somebody to become the fashion police here in Urbana regarding who wears what and what you put on your backside? I know for myself, my mother has a closet full of mink stoles and mink coats. And so my question is, should I decide to sell those, is somebody going to come knocking on my door telling me what I can and cannot do from the privacy of my home and with my own things?
Grace?
Thank you, sorry. Answer to that would be no. That would be considered a used fur product, which would be exempt from this. So if it's already there, if you have, inherited some fur coat kind of deal, that is an exception here. This applies to new furs, so one that has been just recently taken from an animal and made into a product. And so on page 52 of our packet that has the minutes in it, I know a little different from some, it's section C that says no person shall sell, offer for sale, or display for sale, trade, or otherwise distribute for monetary or non-monetary consideration a fur product in the city of Urbana. And there's definitions again of what fur product means and what exemptions are. So this would apply to a buyer taking physical possession of a product within the city, or the seller located in the city. So that would not apply to online sales. There's not really much of a way to regulate that. This would just be for, again, new fur products
So I can
bought
wear
or
it.
sold in Urbana.
I can wear it anywhere I want to, and I'm not going to have any problems.
This does not apply to wearing fur.
It doesn't apply to wearing fur.
Correct. This is the sale of new furs. And if I may respond to some earlier things as well, I do agree that I think the logistical enforcement of it is definitely something to consider. I think this is not new. We have a lot of things we enforce in the city. I don't know who my neighbors call when my grass gets too long to complain about it and report it, and who enforces that. I don't know. I think we could figure it out with fur just like we do with other things. And then I did just want to clarify that this was shared with the draft on, my email says June 10th, and I'm sorry if that email didn't get through to y'all. And there was a request to wait until after the budget period, so there was patience and delay in waiting until after the budget period. And yeah, time has a way of flying and things moving slowly. So I do hope that we can consider this in a timely manner.
Thank you. Verdell?
So I do have a question too. I don't wear fur, but I don't know, like, how do we tell the difference if someone's selling a fake fur and a real fur?
That was my question.
Is there any guidelines for that? And I just know that I do understand that a lot of companies, a lot of these big brand companies have moved away from the real fur and have started making the fake fur products. So I just don't understand how can the police or whoever's going to enforce this tell if that's a real fur coat in the store or not. But yeah, that's the only thing I have.
I think those are great questions for us to consider. And we also have some of the drafters in the audience. If you have any things to chime in, feel free to. We would need you to come to a microphone if chair's cool with that.
It's at the chair's discretion, and typically that is reserved for organizations who are here presenting on an item. Grace, you are the sponsor for the item. You should be the one speaking to it.
Okay, then sorry. We can get back to you with some of their thoughts.
I'm sorry, Mary Alice.
It's all right. So the way I read this right now, the one that I'm tripping up on a little bit is C1. The buyer takes physical possession of the fur product in the city. That says to me, if you order something online, if you have it delivered in the city, you are in violation of this. That's what that says to me. Is that correct or incorrect?
I don't believe that is the intent of it, but I do see what you're saying of taking possession in the city. If it was mailed to you, where do you call that taking possession point?
Yeah. Okay, that was my, I guess, along the lines that James was talking about, like what ask are we going to having on the police, on community development, whomever, who is going to take on that responsibility? What's the process? It seems like some of those nuts and bolts need to be figured out before we can really have a serious conversation about the ordinance, in my opinion.
Grace.
Thank you. I appreciate the discussion. I think these are all great questions that I agree we need to figure out. I was hoping to have a little more input and collaboration as far as that side, answering some of those questions before this point. But I think that it's okay to move it along and have the discussion here. So I'm happy to continue the discussion, can get some answers back to you. And I had another point that I lost. I might think of it later, but thanks. As far as enforcement, yes, I think we need to figure that out. A lot of the things, to my understanding, are somewhat reported. Like my understanding of, I'll go back to lawn ordinance and people's grass not being over 8 inches tall, which I think we could update and improve anyway. But there's no one from the city who goes around and drives around town and measures people's grass and writes them a ticket, to my understanding. If someone reports it, which I have, my neighbors complain about my grass being too long, then they will come out and deal with it. But typically, the city is not out there looking for these local regulatory nonviolent offenses in that way. So that's what I would imagine would be a similar kind of thing, but would love to have some input and thought from city on the operational side.
Darius.
I just wanted to provide clarification for Grace's communication. She is right. Ordinance policy draft did come through on the 10th of June. That is completely on my fault. I included it with what was also shared on the 10th, which was a backyard poultry ordinance, and they got combined in my emails. That did come through. If council does want more feedback on the operational side of staff, we'll be happy to share that out, but I can't give you a time frame now. I can meet with staff to kind of walk through the best practices that we will need to take to provide oversight over this. And then just for some of the comments for Grace in regards to like your yard and anything of that in compliance, that is followed through our building safety. So in this case, those individuals have specialties in what they're doing. As though this may sound minor, that it's just the follow through of fur. Obviously, we still want someone who would clearly have an understanding of that. So that will have to be some discussion with staff. And before we can just add new responsibility, there is a process even with that to add more responsibility onto staff. But nonetheless, we will be happy to provide some feedback at a later time if council requires it.
Chris.
To be clear, I'm stuck on Alderman Jones's point, and that is how I mean, furs now are made with other material, so they look like fur, but they're not fur. And is that still allowed in the city of Urbana? Fake fur? Yeah. Would that be, Grace? Or-
Yes, this does not apply to fur alternatives.
So back to detection of which is which, right? Because they look pretty real often. All right.
So a lot of my questions were asked, so I'm really glad about that. I just think this gets too muddy. This is, it leaves a lot of gray area if it's new, if it's used, if it's for religious purposes or cultural exemptions. Like, I think there's so many different things to consider when we talk about, prohibiting such a thing. Also, what if there is a donation, a charitable donation for an auction that came from a store? You know what I mean? It's just too much, and I don't think, I personally don't feel that the city of Urbana should monitor something like that within the city, not to mention the small businesses that would be affected if this was happening. So it brings me back to, is there a specific problem occurring in Urbana that this ordinance is intended to solve? So I guess, I just think that this is something that is above us. Ms. Hersey.
I think the main issue that I have is the imposition on my personal feeling of what I can wear, period. And I don't have, I don't like anybody dictating to me what my fashion sense ought to be.
Excuse me. We don't presently have a motion on the floor at this point. It should just be questions only. Discussion can only occur after a motion has
Okay.
happened.
Thank you.
So, okay, go ahead, Stephanie.
Okay,
I'd make a motion.
Okay, a motion, please?
Sure, I would move ordinance number 2026-07-021, an ordinance amending Chapter 15, miscellaneous offenses and provisions of the Urbana City Code relating to the trade in fur products to stay in committee of the whole with no specific time to return. We've done that before. Is that fly?
Yes, typically with like guidance, like to collaborate either with staff or after a certain benchmark is reached, like after a budget, which we're past the budget now, but like, I guess some direction about like staff benchmark or something, or some indication to the clerk's office of when you want us to bring it back.
Yes, that would be great after a staff assessment and kind of response.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye. Oh, I'm sorry, now it's time for discussion. Sorry, you all.
As I was saying then, I think that this ordinance is, at least for a local level, definitely an invasion of what, for somebody to be able to tell me what I can wear or what I can sell or what I can buy, or what anybody can sell in the city. You kind of, I don't, it's funny, we can sell dope, but we can't sell fur. Well, that's basically what it is. You got New Era set up down there, all over Champaign-Urbana, as a matter of fact. So it's kind of weird, and I just don't like the idea of my choices being questioned in that manner of what I can go and buy and where, and then I have to go and buy it. If this is something that this is something they can send to Springfield and let them make some kind of decision like that, but I am not prepared to try to tell people what they can buy or what they can sell, or what they can or cannot wear, or, and how it's offensive. I do respect the fur issue. I respect that, but, what I don't let vegetarians tell me I can't eat meat. So it's, to me, it's no different than what you can tell me what I can buy or sell regarding this issue as well. So that's just my opinion.
James?
Yeah, I am looking forward to getting the staff's take on this. I think that's an important question. That's a practical question. I am always concerned about legislation or ordinances or rules where there is not a current issue. It's a solution in search of a problem at this point, and maybe because we've talked about it, we'll hear whether there's an impact or whether this is something that has been going on and we didn't know it.
Grace?
Thank you. Just say again that I appreciate the discussion and the questions and willingness to look into this further and consider it. Again, this is not about wearing fur or buying or selling used or fake or alternative furs, just new fur products. Again, I appreciate the questions, and we can try and share some information from constituents. City Council at Urbana, il.gov email reaches all of us. If members of the public have thoughts that you want to share, maybe you have your answers to some of these questions that you were not able to share with us tonight. But I think in a lot of ways, in many instances, Urbana has been a leader in the state of passing things first. If we waited around for the state for non-discrimination in housing and ethical divestment and a lot of other things, they would just barely be happening or not happen at all. So I think that it's okay, and one of the things I really appreciate that Urbana can take a step in a direction and be the first to do it in the state in a lot of ways. We've heard from a lot of public input that kind of graphically articulates how cruel and unnecessary this is, and it's something that would have no negative impact as far as we can tell. Look into and verify that on any of these businesses. So again, it's a preventative measure and stands by, I think, the values in Urbana. My values, I'll say that. So thank you.
I think it's kind of heavy to compare them to non-discrimination and some other things. And that's just like you share your values in mine, I think that's a little heavy as far as the comparison of the two. They seem unequally yoked. So moving forward, are there anything else? I don't know what I'm supposed to say right now. We did the discussion. Oh, okay, now can we vote? All in favor, aye, I'm sorry.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
All right, this is approved. And so next we have ordinance number 2024. It's 12042, an ordinance establishing approval, policy, and reporting requirements for policing surveillance technology and databases, presented by Council Member Wilkins and Colasetti.
I do have a spreadsheet I would pull up if that's all right with the chair. I wasn't sure if there was other presentations planned for this tonight. No.
Oh, that's fine.
I did bring a number of things to suggest as far as changes, but they're aligned with the things that we have talked about in the past. A couple of them are just terminologies that were changed throughout the document except for two places, so I think that would be an easy thing to address early.
Yes.
But I'm perfectly happy to let Grace drive the bus on input on updates, and if we need to have a discussion about, or straw poll about what needs to go and what needs to stay, we can work on it that way.
Yes, if I may, I just wanted to pull this up. I emailed this to council members. I tried to just compile the remaining kind of issues to be decided from my understanding and recollection, and offer additional ones. So if you have additional, be happy to add this if this is something that we would like to use. And then I just tried to put it into a yes/no question. So like, for example, the first one, oversight ordinance applies to all city departments or just to police departments or other certain departments. So question, shall the ordinance apply to all city departments? Yes, no. I guess if no, then we need to ask which ones it does apply to. So there might be, I guess, some subsequent questions. And then I took the recommended changes from the police department that we went through side by side in the discussion in the last meeting and tried to pose those as a yes or no question as well. And then we could straw poll. I was thinking we might not have everyone at all the meetings, but we do have all the council members here. So I think we could do this in person. I had kind of set this up in case we were missing members, that they could still have their kind of straw poll taken into account. So that's, I guess, all I have for now. Yeah.
So I have one thing that is just terminology. Throughout the document, we changed the use of, it originally appeared as surveillance technology or databases. And I think we changed 7 or 8 instances of where that was, but in section 8 in B and it's B and A, that surveillance technology or databases still appears, and if we could just correct that to mirror the other changes that we made. That's just a typographical change.
Just removing and databases in section 8.
Or databases, I think is, it's in section 8A, sorry, yeah, 8A, and what is currently 8C, no, 8, yeah, 8D.
Yes, noted. And there will be some additional changes, like, for example, when we decide if this is all departments or police, I think those words will change, but things are just kind of waiting till we had figured it all out. But yes, I think that in our previous discussions, we had decided that surveillance technology is sufficient without and databases, because the definition is the technology and the data they produce. So it's all ready encumbered in that surveillance technology. So thanks for catching that. We can update that. Are there any other things that we wanted to consider here? Was there anything I was missing in our kind of straw poll list?
Mary Alice.
That we had had some conversation in the past about whether or not the CPRB should be part of the review process, so I'd like to put that up for a straw poll. I also had some suggestions for modifications of the definition of surveillance technology, but I can hold those. We can go through this, or I could add it now. It's up to you.
However, I don't know if you have it.
Basically, the way the definition of surveillance technology is written is really broad, and I wanted to ensure that what we want it to do, what we want it to capture, is captured here to reduce any ambiguity. So one thing I wanted to do was to add in, instead of software that is capable of collecting, saying software that is designed, intended, or primarily used to collect, because that's much more targeted in terms of surveillance, in my opinion. And then also in that sentence, or in that definition, that last part seems recursive to me, meaning right now it says, or any system, device, or vehicle that is equipped with electronic surveillance monitoring device, hardware, and software. It seems odd to use surveillance in the definition of surveillance. So I don't think that part is necessary. So 2 things. A, making it a little more concrete in terms of what those types of devices and hardware and software are, and B, removing that last sentence. Those are two things that I wanted to do. But I'm happy to, if people are okay with that, I'm happy to like draft up something so that you can like fully see it. But those are the two gist of what I was suggesting.
I saw, Chris, have you changed your mind?
Yeah, Mike.
Okay. James?
So I was going to actually tie two of the line items together. I'm prepared to support having this apply to all departments, but in connection to that, I would remove the CPRB's review responsibilities in the section that appears in, and thus making all the review responsibilities the responsibility of City Council as we bring this on board. I am perfectly willing to say that at some point in the future, we may recognize that other parts of the organization or commissions and such should be part of this process. And I am also comfortable having both CPRB and the Human Rights Commission be part of fielding complaints, which is still in, would still be in there if we took out Section A. But I wanted to blend that idea of it applying to all city departments with the idea that City Council is going to take on this review at least early on as we learn the scope and impact of this. And so I'm going to support one if we do the other. I'm entangling them from my perspective.
I'm going to briefly insert myself, and I do apologize because I am anticipating this is going to be a parliamentary marathon going through these together. So at this time, we don't have a motion on the floor. Typically, we have a presentation initially, and I think it is fair to make sure that we have a full menu of things that we want to capture in relative like amendments or motions. So I think it's fine to like add things to this list, but I think we should try to refrain from discussion if we can beyond adding items to this list until there is a motion on the floor. Of course, this is also a time for questions as well, but yeah.
James?
I would even be inclined to make a motion to suspend our rules to let us engage in this conversation, because we've done it in a discussion manner several times before and made a lot of progress. And we want to get to something that we can then move and vote on. And so if it makes the clerk feel more comfortable, I would move that we suspend our rules and engage in a discussion to get to something we could pass forward tonight.
You certainly can. We need a motion and a second to suspend rules along with a vote of, I believe, 2/3 of the council, which I'm confident you will have here tonight. The other thing I will ask, since we're kind of throwing out the rule book, if we can have like some sort of concise way to track as we move through this order of operations. I did print the Excel sheet that Grace has up on the screen, and I did write down the 3 notes that were added as well as an attempt to try to track it, to help track the edits and also track the votes as they come. So if I'm like waving my hand like, friends, where are we at? Please bear with me since we're gonna abandon the rules.
So I would move that we suspend our rules to allow discussion to work out the actual text of this legislation.
I'll second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Nay.
All right, so moved. So we're having free conversation now. I was going to ask, and only because we have continued to talk about this, because city council members are elected and publicly responsible for decisions about Urbana, I just want to know what is the reasoning for assigning surveillance oversight to the CPRB rather than keeping it the final oversight with the city council. And so that is, of course, connected to what James is considering the change, but I just don't understand why it's necessary, especially with the purpose of the CPRB. And we've talked about that, but there's nothing that could make me support that.
Sure. I guess I can't say anything to persuade you that.
That's true. Thanks, girl.
Yeah. I think, yeah, as we talked about before, they have their own expertise. It's a group of volunteers who have more insight than the average person or even us council members into some of the operations of the police department and some of that records. I will say, in my perspective, I don't think that there's anything qualifying or, yeah, city council members, some are elected, some are not. Some are the only candidate running. There's not really a qualifying thing. I don't know that we are more qualified than any other people in the city.
So that means we are not more or less qualified than the people over the CPRB, because if you consider it, Grace, you don't know any of the real experience that some of us may have had, so you don't know if we're more qualified or not, correct?
Correct. Just saying it's not a requirement.
Okay. Thank you. Chris?
Yeah, I think the thinking of including the CPRB was their expertise. They are the most trained commission and board of any of our boards and commissions. They, and the idea was more eyes on it to provide the council with as much information and independent look at what, I mean, they in particular, they are the oversight of police behavior. So that is why they were kind of pulled in to add that for that element of it. And only to provide just their opinion for us to consider, just another data point, more eyes and another opinion.
Which I totally understand, and in my opinion, that creates a greater conflict. That creates greater conflict. I feel like because of that, and because they review complaints involving police conduct, I cannot see us putting in their hands to have this oversight as well. So, Ms. Hersey.
Chris, could you be more specific about the training that CPRB does? I know that when Carol Mitten was here, she worked really hard to get a standard because of the simple fact that they are making decisions regarding what happens or if the police if there is an issue or if there is not. But I wasn't sure how far she got with that. So could you please be more specific and tell me what is the training that CPRB has that that makes them so expertise, other than maybe a couple of them are lawyers?
Yeah, there are a couple lawyers, that's big, but they get trained in the law in terms of use of force. They get trained what kind of the policies are of the police. They get trained.
Do they go to the citizens police training?
They can. That's optional. That's a citywide offer to everybody. I would rather that the Civilian Police Review Board or the police department, the chief or the deputy chief want to chime in on all the training they have with regards to use of tasers, the use of body cams, the laws that apply.
I know there's a lot of information that they have to know,
yeah.
but what I'm asking is what training do they get to know? I mean, is there like a professional development type of thing that they attend, or as a commission or as individuals that gives them specific insight into? I know, is there an instruction manual or something like that? Because the only person that I've talked to that was on CPRB, I can't even say it now, CPRB, was I think Ricardo Diaz, and he and I would talk occasionally. But that was a conversation that we never had. I would just like to know specifically what their training is in that, and if you know.
Well, we do have a member of the CPRB in the audience. They could
Is
maybe step.
Jane?
Jane could
Can
probably step.
Jane
But
come and tell us,
you just
Darcy?
went through it,
We
right?
about to do this again? Didn't Darcy just say that can't happen?
Is it a discussion that we can have now, Darcy, or should Jane just email me after I learn how to do this computer?
So ordinary procedure is that the only time that members of the audience are allowed to address the body is during public input.
Okay, I'm
because
sorry, Jane. You have to catch me later, girl.
But you guys
Oh,
did,
yeah, I would like to know.
you guys also did suspend your council rules.
No, we
Well, no.
suspended the rules on
So
discussion.
that we could discuss.
That's what my specific motion was.
You didn't specify it in the motion.
I did.
No, your verbiage was, I moved to suspend the rules.
I moved to suspend rules to allow discussion so that we could get to a piece of legislation that we could pass tonight.
Okay, if that was your intention, that was not what was stated at the time of the motion.
No, you didn't say that during the time of motion. So do we have to redo that now?
It's up to you.
Stephanie?
Because as I understand it presently, you guys have the show.
Sorry, Stephanie.
Sorry, Stephanie, we made this so complicated for
It's
you your
all
first
good,
time.
girl. Let's do this. I think that it would be good to go with what James was trying to say, that we open this to have conversation amongst the whole, and if there are people that want to add things, they can email or communicate with us individually, and then we can go from there.
Is that a motion?
I don't know,
Or do we
girl.
have to make a motion?
You don't have to make a motion. She's still the chair.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm trying to understand this myself.
Me too.
Grace?
Thank you. If I can try and bring us back here, if there are any other things we want to add to this list of things to have a straw poll on, and then I think from there, once we have that complete, the two options that I would see would be to either start taking some of these straw poll votes tonight, or wait till next week if you wanted more time to consider them, talk to your people, get some more information, like definition change in Mary Alice I have, like, I don't know if you need more time to prepare that change so that we can kind of have it written here.
I mean, what can we do to move this forward tonight? I feel like this has been, I think we need to be able to move this forward, but, you know, Mary Alice?
I was just going to say, what I would propose is if people are open to just the overall two things that I suggested, then I can send it for next week, and people can have the final verbiage to look to see. But if people aren't, if people aren't supportive of that, then I won't spend time doing that. Does that make sense? So I'm not going to give you the exact things, but the two basic things that I want to do is remove the last sentence about the vehicle, and I want to specifically say device, hardware, and software that is designed, intended, or primarily used to. That's like, I just want to add that bit in there. So if we do a straw poll that people are open to that, then I will send the email to everybody with the final language, and then you can vote on that. So that's what I would ask for in terms of my row 11.
So could I ask a clarifying question? So maybe the question for the straw poll, are you interested in changing the definition?
Are you open to considering a definition which removes the last sentence and replaces the word capable with more specific language?
I'm saying yes.
I'm saying yes, too. The rules are all broken now.
The rules are all broken. However, this is me waving my hands. Are you taking a straw poll on that right now?
Can we?
That's what I wanted to ask the chair. Can we do a straw poll of all these
Yes.
And
at some point? I mean, that's what I'm hoping we could or could we all agree? Why don't we blow through all these?
Yeah, I think we should.
At least get it to that point, and then we might be able to figure this out.
Okay. Grace?
One thing, thank you. I'm sorry, Stephanie, we are looking a lot to you as the chair to make some of these
Girl,
decisions.
I'm over here like, okay. But,
yeah.
I mean, I'm learning a lot because this is going to help me moving forward. So thank you all for making this as hard as it could be for me.
It is, yeah. But I wanted to let you know, you can pass the chair if you just wanted to pass it off for this point.
No, we don't do that.
And for discussion, that is. For point of clarification, I was trying to also say that for discussion, the chair cannot enter into discussion. You do need to pass the chair to enter into discussion.
Okay.
But you can also pass it at any point if you don't want to deal with all this.
So I thought we were having open discussion since we weren't in that. Rules are suspended, right? So when we get the rules back, I'll remember that. Thanks, Grace.
I will also, just as a housekeeping measure, you guys are great. However, the audio system is still probably not up to normal. And even with normal, if only one of you guys can talk at a time, that
Okay.
way the meeting record recording is clear.
Yes.
So when I go back to write the minutes, I know what is happening.
Yes, so let's at least still, maybe we can still keep the raise our hands and I call on someone so that we can talk one at a time. Is that okay? All right. Now nobody? James?
You are the chair. You are the ultimate authority.
Okay.
Run with it.
Are there any more, are we still in discussion? Any more questions or comments? Mary Alice?
Would the chair be open to us going one by one and making sure that everybody understands it and then ask for a straw poll? Would that
Yes,
be good?
absolutely. Mhm.
Shall I?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, is that big enough to read on your things? I can make it a little bigger. First one we talked about already, should this apply to all city departments or just police or any specific department? Second issue is there was a suggestion from UPD to add to section 1 that nothing in this ordinance is intended to restrict or delay lawful real-time law enforcement decision-making. There's a little more to that sentence that we had covered last week that's in section 1 in the recommendation. So shall we include that recommendation? The third one is, maybe I'll just number these. How's that? That there was another suggestion from UPD for section 4 stating that the city department may continue its use of the surveillance technology while the council approval process is pending, provided the city department has provided all documents.
Mary Alice?
So the row 5 or number, the third question there, is that in specific to when we have existing technology that hasn't yet been approved? Do you know if that's the language that goes, I think it's 4? Is that
Yes,
right?
that was in 4. Can pull this up as well. And this, to my understanding, was suggested to be added so that if a department already, say, provided their use policy, their use report and all that on a technology and it's in council's hands, but maybe we don't have a quorum or we keep it in council longer or we keep doing those things because as written, there is 180 days. And if it's not approved in that time period, then they should cease using that technology. So this is an exemption saying that if it's due to council approval process being pending, then they can still continue using that technology.
Okay, thank you.
The next one, we'll call number 4, is about using the state definition of disaster as determined by the mayor for exemptions to surveillance oversight in section 6. Versus a suggestion by UPD to replace disaster with exigent circumstances and exemptions stated by the police head, I believe. Let's look at that one. So essentially, it's just changing the word exigent to disaster in section 6. But the real difference comes with the definition of exigent circumstance, meaning the Urbana police chief or their designees' good faith and reasonable belief that an emergency involving danger of death, physical injury, or significant property damage or loss similar to those that would render it impractical to obtain a warrant, requires the use of surveillance technology or the surveillance data it provides. The use of surveillance technology in exigent circumstances shall not infringe upon an individual's right to peacefully protest or exercise other lawful and protected constitutional rights.
Mary Alice.
Sorry, I'd like to, if you could go back to the table for a moment, because I think there's another option. So we have one, is it called exigent or disaster? And another one is it the mayor or the mayor's designee or the chief of police who makes the call? So they're two separate issues in my opinion. So I'd like to just split that apart if that's okay. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yes, I'm just struggling with the mouse here, sorry.
So to clarify from my notes, for 5.5, mayor or designee is one, and then chief or designee is a separate one, or is that one thing that you suggested, Mary Alice?
Well, the idea is who gets to make the call, right, of the exigent circumstances.
So just mayor or designee?
Yes, mayor or designee, and the police said the chief of police. So that's the delineation that I was trying to make. Does that make sense?
Mayor or chief of police is the options, right? And either of them have a designee option.
Correct.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then I'm just trying to make these a yes/no question, so I'll just pick like, shall the mayor determine disaster/exigent circumstance? As 5.5, as Darcy had, and also we'll try and help keep these and can share this version with you as well. If we're ready to move on, we can call number 6. The next one, suggestion from UPD to change section 7, some operational steps that some main things, and my take on it is that adding that's the policy of the city that surveillance technology shall be used in compliance with this ordinance. However, nothing in this section shall be interpreted to prohibit or discourage the collection of evidence by law enforcement officers acting in good faith within the scope of their duties and in accordance with applicable law. So question being, shall the ordinance change to the section 7 recommendations? And I think that it would be helpful if we could have some more kind of legal justification or precedent for some of those changes. I think would be helpful information. I know our city attorney gave some kind of insights last discussion, but I don't know if there's anything else you can add. If not, or other questions, we could go to the next one. We
So
can call.
I'm sorry, are you saying that if you don't hear a reason why you should change it, you don't want to change it? Is that what you're saying? Like you're saying you want to hear legal reasoning why it should change. So are you saying that we as a council, if you don't hear a reason why you feel it should change, it's going to stay the same? I just want to understand what you're saying. Because if we all agree that it should change, then we agree that it should change, correct?
Yes.
Okay, that's my question, because you asked, you said, I want to hear legal reasoning, and then you're like, okay, well, since I didn't hear anything, let's move on. We got to do better than that, right? Because it's not the Grace Show, right? So how do we make sure that we all can weigh in on that? Because if we feel like it should change as a council, then that's what we feel, right? And then it becomes legal once we make it legal, right?
Yes, the council did not draft the suggestions, to my understanding. This was from the police department and the city
Okay.
attorney.
Okay.
And there was a lot of,
It was from the police department and the city attorney, which means he probably decided, helped them figure out why it was necessary, maybe? I'm just asking.
I will also just briefly chime in as a point of like history of the process. A lot of the prior discussions just happened as discussion, not as the actual action item.
Okay.
And so even if ideas were floated and consensus was gathered or a straw poll was even taken, it wasn't actionable. And
Okay.
so that's part of why tonight was going to be such an extended process, is we haven't actually legally done any of the edits to the living document yet. We have discussed it, we have come up with a whole lot of ideas, which is why we've got this very long list of to-dos. But we haven't actually done any of these things that we have talked about or considered or asked questions about and discussed for the many months.
Okay, thank you, Darcy,
Yeah.
I appreciate that. So then, does anybody weigh in on it, or do we just say if there's no further, then we just leave it out? Is that what we do?
You guys get to do whatever your majority agrees to with this.
No, I was just asking, because, okay, I think I just wanted to understand, do we just kind of move on and decide? Yeah. Because some stuff, as we talked about it, we were working to do updates, right? But if there are we just decide we move on past that one and go to the next one? Is that what we just do?
My feeling is right now we're just making sure everything's clear.
Okay.
Before we go back through a second pass and have a straw.
Okay, thank you.
That's
Thank you.
what
I just want to
We're not
understand.
leaving them on the floor as we move forward.
Okay.
And that's what because we haven't taken any straw polls yet.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, my understanding of the present procedure is we are just making sure that everyone understands the verbiage of the question. So when we circle back to do the individual straw polls as they're numbered through, everybody has the same understanding of what the question they're being asked is.
Thank you. Thank all of y'all. So, we moving on? Mm-hmm.
sure, I believe we were on, we can call number 7. There's a recommendation to add an example of non-surveillance technology for case-specific use of publicly available information, open source intelligence, and federally or state-regulated criminal justice databases and federal and state law enforcement infrastructure. So question being, shall we add this as a definition of non-surveillance technology? Next one, there's also a recommendation to add an exemption for sensitive surveillance technology in the use report, use policy, and annual report, defined currently as any information about surveillance technology that, if publicly disclosed, could unreasonably expose or endanger city infrastructure or adversely impact the operations of city departments. This also includes information about surveillance technology for which public disclosure may otherwise be prohibited by law. I would think it is very appropriate to add examples and non-examples of this. I personally still don't understand concretely what this would mean, and have asked and would really appreciate some examples and non-examples of what we mean by this. No other questions, comments? The next one is, as Mary Alice just said, the definition change. Oh, and then the CPRB oversight. So we're back to the new ones for tonight. Your mic on.
I do have one question about Section 9, which appears to have been added, that lists all the different statutes that are referred to across the board. I don't know when it was added, but it's highlighted as a track change. And so the one question I have about that is the last sentence in that, which attempts to make, looks like it's attempting to make our ordinance control over state ordinances, which I don't think we can do.
This was drafted by our city attorney, so I will field that to him.
In the case of statutes that preempt city council action, then it would be state law that prevails. There are some cases where the city could regulate more than the state law does. When it comes to, I believe it's the Drone Surveillance Act, and drones in general, that's the domain of the state, purview of the state. And so generally within city airspace, who can fly a drone and, you know, to what extent, those are questions of state law. The city's preempted from regulating airspace generally in terms of departmental operation and what access to specific technologies our police department has. That's the domain of the city council as a legislative body.
So these are limited to places where we could have more strict control?
Yes.
These three?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Then I don't have anything to put about that.
Anyone else with discussion? Grace?
Thank you. I was wondering if there were any provided examples and non-examples of the sensitive surveillance technology for tonight.
Yes, so our police department provided some examples of the sensitive surveillance technology information. It's not the issue whether it's public, but rather to protect the operations itself. So honestly, this information I'm going to share out in a confidential email for you all to know. It's in regards to, again, some of the tools that are used for investigation that, actually I'm going to ask police to provide some information, but I'll send what they provided me. But does either one of you want to speak on it?
What we're trying to protect is how we conduct sensitive investigations as it relates to our equipment, so to speak. If those that we were targeting knew the type of equipment that we used, they could take some steps to prevent us from effectively doing investigations. We provided some information, as City Administrator Darius said, last Friday, I believe. There were 3 or 4 examples Deputy Chief Cervantes highlighted, and they escape me at the moment, but I'll let him crystallize those for you now.
Thank you. To start off, I want to be clear that I think there's an important distinction between transparency and operational security. Transparency builds trust. Operational security protects victims, investigations, and officers. And in my opinion, those two principles can and should coexist. So what we're really talking about is the operational security standpoint. We don't want somebody who may want to use this information against us. And one of the examples that I provided was regarding the types and the use data when it comes to all of our covert equipment. We have no problem saying that we have covert cameras that record certain types of investigations, whether that's a drug investigation, a theft investigation, whatever it is. We do have access to those types of tools, but obviously we wouldn't want to put on display what those tools are and how they could be then used against us or compromise any investigation or safety of an individual using those. I've personally worked undercover and I've used those types of tools in my investigation, and if we highlighted those tools, where we're using them and how we're using them, that could have put me at risk if we were putting that out on, for lack of a better term, Front Street for the public to see. That was just one example. The other examples were in the certain types of software that we use when it comes to any type of CSAM or child sexual abuse material, or the software that our detectives use that we, whether we're getting it from other cooperative partners or we're using it ourselves, we wouldn't want to highlight those specific types, because then anybody that wanted to use those materials out there would know exactly what type we're using. And the best analogy that I can think of is it's obvious that the banks use security systems. They have alarms, they have vaults, they have different types of safes, right? That protects our money. No one's hiding the fact that they use those, but what they're not saying is, in those types of scenarios, we're not saying the brand, the make, the model of what safe it is, so that somebody that may want to use it inappropriately can go out there and research that, or that they can use it to defeat whatever security mechanisms that they have in place. Essentially, those are just a few of them. Same thing with any type of vehicle tracking. If we were doing vehicle trafficking or tracking, and I want to make it clear lawfully, all of these investigations, anything that we're using this type of equipment to record surreptitiously, we do it lawfully, and that's either by a warrant or in the course of our investigations that would typically be done within our procedures.
Verdell.
So I understand the analogy you're using, and I think you're right. Criminals can figure out ways around these little loopholes. But so you're saying you don't want this sensitive surveillance technology for the public, but council would still know what exactly that you're using. Is that what you're stating, or you don't want anyone to know the exact details of the technology?
So I think that what the chief just explained is you guys would have to know in order to approve it. What we wouldn't want is, when we're saying the use report, we're not talking specifics of what types and where. For instance, if we put in a use report that we used a drug or an undercover camera for a drug investigation in certain locations at certain times, it wouldn't be hard for the person that we're buying drugs from to figure out, oh, well, the police said they're using this type of camera on this date, this time, wherever it was at. We have no problem saying generically that we have access to undercover cameras and recording devices, but those specifics are not something that we would want to highlight. And that would be, I believe, up to the council in making those decisions. What we're saying is we would want certain details redacted or not put out for public consumption, if that answers your question.
Thank you.
Okay, Grace.
Thank you. On that point, I didn't know if then we could word it a little more accurately to fit that description, so that we still approve these technologies. Maybe they still have an annual report, but that there is some redactions that are possible for the sensitive surveillance technology. I don't know if that's something that we want to consider, or as it's stated now, is to just exempt them entirely from a report and a policy, which I guess exempts it from approval, because I don't know how we could approve it if we don't have a policy or information on it. So it seems like either is suggested now is that we exempt it entirely, so it's not approved, there's no policy, there's nothing whatever on it, or we have kind of what seems like we discussed tonight, where there's an option to redact some of the key details of that technology. And I was just pulling up here if you wanted a refresher on what the use policy and annual report entail. It does say, the purpose of the technology. I think it does ask for, some locations if it is in certain places. So I could see that there might be some information that might be vulnerable. Again, I appreciate some of the examples, but I would like to better understand what technologies we're talking about, but it seems like it might be more accurate to exempt some of the details rather than exclude it from the entire process.
Councilmember Wilkin, if I could offer a point of clarification based on something I heard you say, since I I drafted the proposed definition for sensitive surveillance technology information, and it's drawn largely from an exemption that the Madison, Wisconsin surveillance ordinance includes. It's intended to describe information about surveillance technology and exempt certain information that would be sensitive about the technology, but not the technology itself. So it's not written with the intent to exclude any particular technology from the council approval process. It's intended to provide a mechanism or a tool for the particularly sensitive information about that technology, as Deputy Chief Cervantes was describing, from being disclosed as part of the approval process.
All right, Mary Alice.
I think what I'm hearing everybody say is we don't want to release the make, model, system, number, software type that we're using for items such as this. I think it makes sense. I like what Matt just said, that those particulars could be removed or redacted, perhaps is a better phrase. But the use of actual technology, a camera, for example, should still go through the procedure, if that makes sense, Grace. So the redaction, I think, is for something that would be sensitive, but it doesn't omit completely from it being in the report or the whole process.
So, obviously, group effort here, we can keep that one to remove it entirely and add a different one of should we just redact certain information, or if we're mostly on board here, we can just change it to certain information.
James.
What I just heard our attorney say is, and I looked at the language, is that is about leaving out details in the report. It's not about leaving out the technology.
I think it is, though, because as written under, it says that sensitive surveillance technology information will not be included in use reports. So
And it says sensitive technology information means any information about surveillance technology that if publicly disclosed could unreasonably expose or endanger city infrastructure or adversely impact the operations of city departments. So that's sensitive technology information. Those are the details about the technology that would be sensitive.
I see.
I think I read it as okay, but I understand it's a long paragraph of detail.
So then I think more accurately, I was missing the information piece, so I appreciate helping me understand that. So shall the ordinance add an exemption for sensitive surveillance technology is not accurate, but information.
Yeah.
And we are understanding that that means key information about a certain technology, not the whole technology itself. Okay. Cool, thank you.
Chris?
Can we add into that when sensitive surveillance technology is used and needs to be concealed, it always is accompanied by a warrant?
A warrant to exclude that information or to use
No,
that
I mean,
technology?
the use of the technology was on the basis of a judicial warrant to use it on the subjects that it was used on. I'm talking like a lawyer.
So I think that would come in the use policy. So again, it's hard to think of it without an example. Hopefully this isn't disclosing UPD operations, but say like a spy pen camera. If someone's undercover, they have a spy pen camera or something. Like that technology we would review and approve in a policy would be on how it's used in a later point when we get to approving things and setting a policy for them. But it sounds like what I'm understanding is in the annual report, we wouldn't specifically say our agents use the spy pen camera when they go to bars and see if they're selling alcohol to minors at this time annually or something that would give away some of their operations. I don't know if that's the shared understanding here. That's what I'm coming to understand.
Okay, so are there any further questions about or edits to straw poll 8's language? Because we still haven't made it to that point yet. Any other edits or changes that need to happen before we straw poll? All right, let's start.
Yes. However you want to do it. I can put yes, no's here per ward, or the clerk just keep track, however we want to do it. Okay, I'll make
I
this-
can keep track of numbers, but please make sure that your thumb is visible above the dais, so when we watch the recording, we can record the individual names behind the votes. Because if I'm writing and my head is down, and you guys are non-verbally giving me a communication, I need the video for the record. Perfect.
And just to clarify, these will be numbers, this is not a roll call, so.
Correct. We're gonna go like straw
Who's
poll
done, did
number
what?
1. Yeah, so it's gonna be like a number recording.
Okay, thank you.
If you want, I can read them out. So again, about whether this applies to all departments or just the police department. So question, shall the ordinance apply to all city departments?
Sharice, do you have a thumb? So are you thumbs down?
Nope, I don't have anything.
You can't abstain.
I'm,
You gotta do something. We don't have conflicts of interest. Up or down? Okay. So 7.
Pass, yeah. Okay. Next one, about adding to section 1, that nothing in this ordinance intends to restrict or delay lawful law enforcement. Shall we add that recommendation to section 1?
Counted 6 thumbs up, 1 thumbs down. Right?
Number 3, the recommendations for section 4B about any city department now may continue to use surveillance technology while council approval is pending, provided that they've provided all the documents. So shall we add that recommended change?
This is number 3. But the verbiage has section 4B3 in it. Do we understand what we're voting on? Yeah. Okay, if that's the case, then I counted 7 thumbs up on that one. Okay.
Number 4, about using the state definition of disaster as determined by the mayor. So shall the ordinance keep section 6 as disaster circumstances?
Okay,
Can't see all the things.
I was gonna say, I see at least,
I'm sorry, I wanted to reread it again.
you're good. Okay, so I see 3 thumbs down. And then 4 thumbs down. Yeah, thank you. And 3 thumbs up, okay.
Number 5, shall the ordinance change section 6 to exigent circumstances?
Say that again.
did you
Let
say,
me read.
yeah,
Where are you?
So section 6, this is number 5.
to which exigent circumstances?
It's between the word disaster or exigent.
I can pull that up here again. So again, right now, it's just changing literally just the word disaster to exigent.
Uh-huh.
But then the real thing is the difference between the definition and who decides that, which I guess will be in separate.
You mean in who decides what exigent circumstances means?
When we have an exigent circumstance, but that will be a separate one, 5.5.
Okay.
4 up, and then
This is
3
just
down.
5? Okay.
And 5.
5.5.
5.5, we were calling it, between the mayor or the chief of police, or either of their designees, for who determines the exigent or disaster circumstances. So question being, shall the mayor determine an exigent circumstance?
Okay, I see 7 thumbs up. Yes, okay.
Next, number 6 is about section 7 operational
Wait,
changes.
can I say one thing? I'm sorry, Grace. One thing regarding, it says, because I need to understand this. The mayor or the chief of police determines exigent/disaster circumstances?
No,
But we got
it's
rid of the
exigent.
disaster. Okay,
true.
okay. Okay.
So, section 7, I could pull that up again, adds,
I would think the fire department might have something to say about that, too.
I will say that we did talk about this with the fire department, Public Works. I don't remember if there were others, and we did discuss this, and they did express that they didn't have an issue with abiding by this as it was written.
Okay.
This is some of the key changes in section 7. So question being, shall we change what was in version 8.2 to these recommended changes that I cannot explain, and I would like more information as well.
Could
Sorry,
you go
were you
back
still
to
reading
this
that? Sorry.
section?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, right there.
I can attempt to explain the difference between the two versions. And I think we talked about this, it's been a few weeks ago, but the impetus for the new red type, section 7, was, the police department's concerns about how the existing draft, which is more what I would call preemptive in terms of excluding information that is acquired via the unapproved use of surveillance technology, how it would function from a practical standpoint. They expressed a desire to see policy language that would be more, that would allow it to be used, but used within parameters and with a process of documenting and explaining what those parameters are throughout the process. And so I would call it more of a governance policy related to surveillance data that's obtained through a non-compliant collection. So what we're talking about is the unwitting collection of data in a manner that hasn't been approved by the city council, or with a technology that hasn't been approved by a member of the department. If it's done knowingly or purposely, there are other processes to address that. Typically, that's going to be, a disciplinary matter. Sometimes
Could you give me an example
a legal matter.
of what you're talking about?
I'm trying to think of the simplest example, but let's just say that there's a particular type of drone technology that has not been approved. And let's say the council has not approved the use of a drone that is owned by a neighboring department. And we have someone who's involved in a situation that is, emerging and
Someone, a victim or a perpetrator?
I'm sorry?
Victim or perpetrator?
I'm talking about a member of the
when
police
a
department,
police
of
department
our
or a
staff,
police officer.
makes a decision to deploy a drone that's, owned by U of I or Champaign, let's say, in a situation, not realizing it hasn't been approved, or not realizing the particular use hasn't been approved. And that drone records, what's happening, and we end up with footage. And in the existing, the earlier Section 7 that's in black on the left-hand side, what we essentially say is we won't use it unless we absolutely are required to, and unless it's exculpatory is the primary exception. But it's more our policy is we're not going to use it if it's improperly obtained unless we're required to. The one on the right says essentially we will use it in good faith within the law. If we're able to, we'll document how it was obtained, but if there's a legitimate prosecutorial use of footage or data that's obtained that is useful in a particular case, that it would be able to be used under the Section 7 that's in red as a matter of course, unless there are reasons why we can't under the law.
Okay, so if this is an emergency situation, for example, let's say that, I'm just trying to, I'll think of something. There's a car accident, car chase, whatever. The person is being followed by the police. They run into a emergency light or something, and the car catches fire, but they get out. And we have to use your thing, a drone that we don't know anything about or whatever, to follow this person. Is that what you're talking? Is that an emergency situation that you might talk about? And this person is wanted for assault and battery.
I think it could play out that way, but I think the key consideration here is that it's being used and it hasn't been approved.
Okay.
Previously. It's not consistent with council's ordinance about prior approval of surveillance technology.
So in an act of emergency, then it's okay to do this, as long as it's done in good faith.
Well, so that would, assuming council adopts the exigent circumstances language as proposed, most likely a situation like what you described would fall under that, based on what I've heard. We're talking about, an inadvertent use where we don't realize we're not complying with, what the ordinance requires in some way, shape, or form. I think there's a lot of different ways that could play out. With a use policy, for example, council might approve a particular technology for a list of 5 or 6 different types, ways it can be utilized, but maybe some others that we're not comfortable with. But if we have an employee who, perhaps isn't aware or is confused about when they can use it and when they can't, and we're using it in a manner that's not compliant, if we collect information with that technology that is not consistent with this approval process, with this policy, that information that's been collected, if it supports, if it becomes evidence in a particular criminal case, let's just say it's drone footage, to use the example that you talked about, if while observing the subject in that case happens to, catch, pick up something else that's happening, and that footage can be used in the prosecution of a crime, if it's potentially has evidentiary value, under the red column says we would use it where we can, essentially.
Okay, I'm just, so I'm still not quite sure exactly what this means, so I'm going to use another hypothetical. Okay. There is a crime that's been committed, and I'm gonna still stick with the drone thing, okay, Matt? we're going after someone that just robbed somebody, and they jump out the car and they run that way, and we end up having to use a drone from another city or something like that, okay? In the process of us following that person, we also happen to catch somebody mugging an old person on the corner. Is that what you're trying to say?
Yeah. I
So
think that's
we would be able, the law enforcement, because we're using this in good faith to not lose one perpetrator, and we end up seeing another one that's in good faith, air quotes. Therefore, in the upcoming issue that happens with the person that is found assaulting this other person, that same footage could also be used for the state's attorney. Is that what this is? That's what this is saying.
It could be.
Okay.
Right. And what this does is essentially sets forth what we do once we discover we have this, this information that we collected and shouldn't have per this policy. Documenting it, the nature of the violation of the policy. Separate the data pending its review. That review would involve the city attorney. And we wouldn't immediately delete it because we can't. We have Records Act requirements that, say that we need to hang on to things even if they're obtained in a manner that's not compliant with our own ordinances. And you review for the potential purposes it could be used for. Otherwise, it's retained and processed separately from other information, other evidence that we might otherwise collect.
Okay.
Chris?
Just a quick question, Matt. I mean,
Yeah.
it's up to the courts to decide if the evidence is any good, right?
Typically, it's going to be the prosecuting entity if they have it, and if it's exculpatory, we have a legal obligation to turn it over to the defense in a case. So, and that would apply in both of these types of scenarios.
I mean, but a particular officer violating a city policy that you're only supposed to use that wasn't approved yet to use that tool yet, but the evidence is still good, so to speak, and it's up to the courts to decide if they're going to use the evidence and it's admissible, right?
Whether it's admissible. Yeah.
And so it's a separate situation with the officer. He's going to come back here and we're going to, if it's documented, and I would assume that the city attorney would make known to the council that, hey, we use some technology we haven't approved yet. Here's what it is. I'm not talking about getting the officer in trouble, but in terms of this new technology was used, then we would deal with it like any other technology in the course of the ordinance. So I would submit this isn't necessary because we would, in the course of the discovery of uses of technology, for instance, Deputy Chief Smicer gave a good example. They discovered that they could track who's swiping identity cards on doors, and they discovered that they didn't have that technology. They used it to solve the situation. That's a technology that maybe we hadn't approved yet. But do you understand what I'm saying? It's separate.
I think so, but I think we're trying to make a distinction between these two policy approaches. The difference between what the column on the left says and what the one on the right says. The one on the left says if we collect surveillance technology data or information in a manner that contradicts or violates this ordinance, it will be deleted and destroyed as soon as possible in accordance with state and federal laws and may not be voluntarily offered as evidence by any city government entity, agency, department, prosecutorial officer, or any other subdivision thereof. in any criminal or civil action or proceeding against any member of the public. We're saying our overarching policy is we will not voluntarily use it for any of these purposes.
Yeah, we can't.
And then we have this little outlet, unless we're required to, or unless we're required to turn it over to the defense because it has, value in a criminal matter for the defendant.
Ms. Hersey?
So my question is then, if this kind of situation exists, if something like this happens, can the mayor just say that this is exigent circumstance?
Something like
Didn't he make that determination? Didn't he have the right to say, this is an exigent circumstance? We didn't intend on seeing these two things happen, but this did happen, and it happened with equipment that no one's been, what, James?
I don't think what we've put out here allows the mayor to, in arrears, say that was an exigent circumstance. What we've put in here is that the mayor has to declare an exigent circumstance such that someone could use a unapproved,
Well, it has to be in arrears
technology.
if he says
This is a circumstance where
it's still an emergency.
it's not necessarily a new technology. It's a technology that just has not been approved. It could be in the process or other things. It's a employee is not aware of the status of the tool and they use it. And it creates assets that then are potentially important in a criminal proceeding. Do we say, just to use an example, we got this without a warrant, we have to throw it away, which is like kind of where I would be? Or do we say, well, they didn't know they didn't have a warrant, so we're going to assume we can use it unless somebody tells us we can't?
Well, what I'm saying is in the
That's my
course.
example for how.
Okay,
how
what
to
I'm
compare
saying,
it.
what I'm saying is that in the course of doing their duty, period, this may be, as far as trying to catch someone that has committed a crime, and in the process, you actually see another crime happening, because we're still using the drone issue.
If they do that intentionally with a piece of technology, knowing it's not approved, this doesn't apply. Because that's
There's too many
willful
decisions to try to make
misconduct.
on the fly, to me.
So if I may,
Okay.
yes, so this section 7, I think that was a good example of like, say that we have a policy that we only use drones with a warrant or probable cause, but we used a drone to just follow someone without a warrant or probable cause, but then we say, haha, I caught you doing this thing. And it does say, to my reading, C2 does say that it may be used for legitimate law enforcement purposes unless and until the city attorney determines that such use would violate applicable law. So this is not just, this doesn't apply to all things. This is just ones that are in a clear violation of a policy. So you either weren't allowed to use it that way based on the policy, or it wasn't approved at all.
So if that's my question. So if it's not approved, but somehow I'm just trying to think of a certain scenario where that could be totally, where it can make a mess, to be honest, where everything could just turn out to be a hot mess.
Yes, absolutely. And I think your point, is, yes, the mayor could just declare any situation an exigent circumstance in a sense, which is what I think is problematic, because we have a major loophole that we can just call a lot of things an exigent circumstance, and
No,
we
'cause
can violate the
exigent
policy.
basically means it has something that has to be taken care of, or immediate. It's immediate, it's emergency. At least that's my understanding of what an exigent circumstance is that it's something that you don't foresee, but it's like when you get there, you go, oh my God, this needs to be taken care of right now. You hear somebody screaming for help, there's a fire, you see smoke coming from under the door, you don't have a search warrant, but you need to get in and try to make sure that somebody's okay or not okay or dead or whatever. They're, or maybe they're just smoking a turkey. But you need to find out to make sure that there's no harm. And that's what that is my understanding of exigent circumstance. Could I please get an
Point of
amen
order,
or
we've
something?
already settled
There's
the
a
exigent
definition, yeah.
circumstance.
Okay, so then there it is. So my point is that that particular red type that we just came from, then is, I'm not going to say that the mayor or whoever can just declare exigent circumstance, except I think one of those issues is if someone needs immediate help.
Okay.
You see?
Can we have a
If
straw
I could-
poll on the one that we?
Yeah,
If I
I
could-
want to say that we are still at number 6 of our straw poll, and we need to get to number 10. Also, it is 10:20, and we have a mandatory 10:30 cutoff, so we need to extend the meeting. So what I am going to ask, Darcy, let me know, is it possible for us to restore our rules before we move through the straw poll, or do we need to finish the straw poll first?
Either is okay. I absolutely understand if you want to restore rules to like kind of have like debate limits and kind of like keep us back on track. You are right. We absolutely do need to also have a separate motion to extend the meeting past 10:30 to like 11 is what I would suggest, honestly, because we can only do it in 30-minute increments. You can do less than that, but we can't do more than 30.
Okay.
But yeah, we can certainly have a conversation about restoring council rules if you'd like to.
Okay. James?
I just think we need to have our straw poll on this item. It's been talked to death.
Okay.
I would like to comment on this one. I don't believe I have, if I may. What I'm saying is I agree that I think that's actually a very good point that Councilmember Hersey brought up about exigent circumstances. And that's what I think is problematic, is that there's giant loopholes that we can just say anything determined by the mayor or their designee is an exigent circumstance now. And also this provides more loopholes. This section as written essentially says that we can just violate all the policies and still use the data as evidence. So I think that's why it's problematic, is it makes big loopholes that make it kind of meaningless.
Mary Alice?
Yeah, so I really like how some of this is outlined in terms of documenting the nature of the potential violations, segregating the data and so forth, but I certainly see Grace's point about number 2, that's the arrow there, and I agree that it is kind of a big loophole there. The reason I bring this up is because I like all the other language, that number 2, I think needs work, because it is a huge loophole. So I don't know how I'm going to vote in the straw poll if we're keeping this together.
If it's okay, we could separate that out.
I would be totally fine with separating out that one
Or
to
okay
work on
with
that
that.
specific.
Yes, we'll call it 6
Sorry,
and a
I'm
half.
split.
Yep, we can call it.
James?
I'd like to make a motion to extend the meeting for 30 minutes.
And I will second.
All right, motion made by James to extend the meeting for 30 minutes, and second by Mary Alice. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? All right, let's move forward.
Okay, so I tried to separate that out. So 6 would be just shall we change the ordinance to section 7 recommendations? Does that work? No, shall we change it, but not section C2? No. So maybe just change section 7 in general? Versus
Two without further revision or something like that? All but C2.
I guess I'm just wondering, like, if 6 passed, that we say we change it to the recommendations, but then 6.5 also passes, those are like kind of in conflict, right?
Let's do 6.5 first.
Okay. Yeah.
6.5.
So 6.5 first, saying, shall we change the ordinance to those section 7 recommendations that we were looking at, except for C2? Do we need to do 6 necessarily? We can. I heard it, don't think so. Anyone think we need to do section, or number 6 and change section 7? I think we kind of already dealt with that.
Okay.
All right, then number 7, talking about adding a definition of non-surveillance technology for case-specific use of publicly available information. Shall the ordinance add a definition of publicly available information as an example of non-surveillance tech? And if we could have a moment of discussion, I have just a quick discussion piece. I think there was a good point brought up earlier about social media monitoring and how that can be weaponized. Even though it might not be a license plate reader, there's still ways of mass surveillance.
Verdale.
Sorry. So this is a good point, because I feel like, let's just call it a spade. Facebook is a hellhole. It's what it's turned into, is everyone's putting their own opinion on it. If you go on there, you see people doing crimes on social media, which is the stupidest thing I ever heard of. So I actually am okay if you're dumb enough to put your crimes for the whole world to see on social media, you should get picked up.
I totally agree.
Mary Alice.
My understanding of this is that it's available to the public, a LinkedIn profile, for example. So if it's publicly available, then it is not surveillance technology. But if you need to use software to basically track somebody's information in their social media that's not publicly available, that is surveillance technology. So the difference is private and public, in my opinion.
Well,
Ms. Hersey.
I'm gonna add one more monkey in that wrench. On Facebook in particularly, you can decide if you want your information public or only for your friends. So therefore, if somebody is only has their friends that can see the stupid thing they did or are doing, then what?
It's not publicly available.
Yeah, it's not publicly available, but your friends can share that and make it publicly available.
Or screenshot.
There's a lot of ways that it could become publicly available. So
That's
then
not what
what?
this is about.
Why isn't it? We just
What
got
your
through
friends
talking.
do with what you share with them is not about what the city does with surveillance technology.
No, but it could become an issue. But you know what? I'm gonna leave it at that. Let it be what it's gonna be.
Okay. So are we going back to our straw poll?
Straw
Okay.
poll on number 7.
Straw poll on number 7.
Five up, 2 down.
Oops, next is about adding an exemption of sensitive surveillance technology information, which I appreciate clarifying for myself. So shall we add an exemption for sensitive surveillance technology information in the annual report, I believe, or use report?
Okay, so I also see 5 thumbs up, 2 thumbs down.
Number 9 is suggested definition change for Mary Alice to remove the last sentence of the definition and change capable of to designed or used for. Is that right? I can pull up that definition if that's helpful.
Didn't you have another word in there, Mary Alice? Didn't you have a third word in that?
Yeah, so instead of capable, it'd be designed, intended, or primarily used to, and then we fix the verbs designed, intended, or primarily used instead of.
That is crinkly, yes. So changing capable of to the words you just said.
Yes.
And removing this
and then-
last sentence.
And removing the last sentence, I'd need to change some of the verbiage, like collecting should be collect, capture, you know what I mean? Like, I'd have to do some of that.
It sounds like you would share updated
I
version that
would.
reflects
I
that.
just am not going to do the work if people are like, hey, it's not worth it.
Yeah, I feel you. So, and then removing this last part, right?
Definitely removing that last part after the semicolon.
Okay.
Oh, yeah, you can have. But
Everybody
I
good
will,
on
if
it?
people are open to that, I will send a definition to everybody to review before council.
So everyone understand what the proposed changes are? Move off this, okay. So, are you open to considering the definition changes that were suggested?
Can I vote for my own?
Okay, so yep, I'm seeing 5 thumbs up, 2 thumbs down.
And then last one is about CPRB oversight. Shall the CPRB review surveillance policies as in section 8A? And if I may have discussion, can we discuss this one? Okay, well, I will, that they did support this.
Oh, okay. So I see 5 thumbs
2,
down, 2 thumbs up.
Can I say something about that? So the reason why I voted no on that is because CPRB, I appreciate the work that they're doing. I think they have a very crucial role. One of the issues is, hearing from them earlier this year, they're kind of playing catch up with a lot of stuff. I just don't want to add, right now, I don't want to add this to their plate. I think it'd be best suited for the council to review these things. And yeah, so that is nothing against CPRB or any other organization. I just think that this is best suited at this point in time for council. Thank you.
Yeah, if you want to call for a motion to approve or send
that
this
was
to
our
council.
last one.
That was
Okay.
our last straw poll. I'm happy to review the ones that you approved. I can just tell you the numbers that were approved and the ones that failed, but it's up to you.
James?
I would move approval of this resolution with the changes that have been determined by the straw polls, including a few more language tweaks on the one item that Mary Alice said needed to be adjusted a little bit to City Council for approval, not on consent agenda.
I'll second.
Just point of order, it's an ordinance, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
You said resolution, James.
Sorry, I should have said ordinance. Thank you. You're more awake than I am at this point.
Which I think is another important point, if I may, that the city attorney would reformat this to be city code edition rather than an ordinance, right, is kind of what I think the understanding and recommendation has been moving along.
Yeah,
Will
this
you
would
have
be-
that for
this
next
would
week?
be- Yeah, I can reformat based upon the straw poll tonight, the content of the proposed ordinance into a format that would essentially slot it into the city code once adopted. So it'd become a new section of city code.
Okay, there was a motion by James Quisenberry, a second by Mary Alice Wu. All in favor? Aye.
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 Any opposed?
No.
So this passes on. Should there be a calling of the roll now, or do I move past that? I'm just looking
No,
at what's
you're
in
good.
here.
You're
Okay,
good. You just did a voice vote, so it's
Okay.
moved to the regular agenda, so it'll appear next on the city council agenda on August 3rd.
okay, thank you. Next, we will move on to council input and communication. Are there any council members who would like to provide input? James?
Yes, I just wanted to say thank you for your forbearance. I was gone the last 2 weeks on a much-needed vacation, and I guess you were so sad you didn't have a meeting last week, so I could join in on this week, but I'm glad I was here. I really appreciate the work that everybody has done on this ordinance. Frankly, Grace has done a huge amount of work to get us this far. I know not everything in it is what she was hoping for it to be, but that's what happens with legislation. Some things have to get tweaked so that everybody can approve it, and I look forward to passing it next week.
Verdale.
James, that explains why you look so lively today, you know? You got a glow on your face. But thank you, Grace, for this work. I think it's crucial that we put something in place. Technology and AI and all these things are moving so quickly and so fast that we need kind of a barrier put in place. So I appreciate Grace and the city attorney and everyone who put work in on this. Thank you.
Matt?
Yeah, I just have a clarifying question about the Section 7 vote. I know that there was sort of carve out with C2, paragraph C2, with some concerns around that. I just want to make sure I'm understanding the concerns, and we can craft it in a way that's responsive to council's concerns about that. I guess the first question is, are we wanting it to be narrower or include examples, or did we approve it without that entirely? And if that's the case, I'm not sure.
Yep, so vote 6.5 was shall the ordinance change section 7 without C2 entirely? And that was passed with 6 thumbs up and 1 thumbs down. But that was the exact verbiage, was without C2, but section 7 in its entirety.
We don't want to replace that. Okay.
Any other comments? Mary Alice?
I'll be really quick. Congratulations on running a very, very difficult committee of the whole, Stephanie. Good job. Good job. And I do want to say to the community, one of the things that I love about our community is all the additional information that the public provides to us. And so I found public input especially interesting today because I thought there was a lot of really good information. So thank you. Keep coming.
Thank you all so much. Thank you all for making me ready because I think I learned a lot tonight and I appreciate it. With no further business before the body, this meeting